Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle, episode 634. Hopefully, you guys have had a great weekend. Moreover, a great Mother's Day. Hopefully, you went and treated your mothers well today. I've got a great
Hello,
ending for
amigo.
this Sunday. Great guest, Mr. Strangely Rooted. How you doing, my friend? You want to tell us how you're doing and where they can find you?
Really good, really good. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms. You can find me at Strangely Rooted on Instagram, and then I'll be doing all the Hareem swap meets and Michigan Gems and Genetics is this weekend coming up. I'll be there, and the Compost Cup. I'll be at that. Probably a couple other things. We'll see. Yeah.
Right on, right on. I hope to make that event next weekend. I love these events, especially the camp out events, the music and the camping. I think that
Yeah,
is the next big thing as far as cannabis events go, man.
yeah. It's definitely great. Like the Compost Cup last year was super fun, and it was pretty small, but it was that almost made it better because it's like everyone could get everything they want during the day, and then we just fucking go all night, and it was fun. Good times. Looking forward to this weekend for sure. It'd be cool to meet you in person.
Right on. I'm hoping to make it there for sure. Yeah, for that kind of thing for me, it started off with the Bigfoot event up here in northern Michigan, that camping thing. And man, there's just something about it, man. It's fun during the day, getting to talk to the vendors and whatnot. But when the lights go down and they can close the door and everybody can relax and campfire starts, that's when the real fun starts.
For sure.
So, what do you have to smoke on this evening?
I got options. I got some I got some Dosey mints rolled up that I grew. I grew everything here. I got a bong packed with some grease monkey in it. And I'm thinking about ripping a dab here of some Boss Scotty. It's a Don Mega by Biscotti from Soulfire Gardens. And that I grew all those from seed. So outside.
Right on. I love. It was a great answer right off the bat there. I got selections. I've got a few things laying around here. Some
Yeah,
fire.
bud. I've been trying not to get
Uh,
too stoned for the last hour getting ready for this thing.
well, then we're. It sounds like you're overdue, my friend. Let's
I'm
let's
ready.
enjoy some cannabis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to roll up. This was a tester, so a little nug here, just a little baby
Hell
nug
yeah.
with my ashy finger. This is some what he's calling the Maui soda pop, and this is
Ooh.
his Maui pop times root beer, one of his root beer strains. And so far, man, killer,
Hell
real
yeah.
heavy on the eyes. I got to be careful how much I
Cheers.
smoke of that this evening, but
Hell
good
yeah.
stuff.
Right on. Yeah, ever since I started making this hash rosin, man, it's like my eyes all of a sudden are getting red as fuck again, like a brand new stoner. Like, holy shit, my eyes are dried out bad. Ripping giant dabs all day.
Oh man, that's a good thing, man. I love the cannabis that tends to hit you right behind the eyes there, man.
Yes. Yeah, the grease monkey is one of my favorites. I grew a ton of that, and it's just real heavy, just delicious too.
I always, well, I started saying this about a year ago when I started dabbing again, uh, which was kind of a phase for me. I go in and out of my dab phase, but man, I was doing them quite a bit on the show, man. And I took a good one night. I'm like, man, that one there's got my even got my third eye squinted there.
Dude, you can get damn near psychedelic with this shit, like on its own, you know? Get into the heavy dabbing.
So right off the bat here, I want to make sure I got your link posted to your Instagram in the description of the show, but I want to throw it in chat right quick because I want them to maybe take a look real quick at this carcass you've got. Like what, 6 posts in, five posts in? That thing is a beast. That's a trophy if I've ever seen one, my man.
Dude, thank
Congrats
you.
on that. When was that grown? What strain are we looking at? That is amazing work, my friend.
Okay, so I built this greenhouse. This is my second greenhouse. I built it 2 years ago to do hemp in, just basically to start the hemp in. I did like a little field with like 250 plants of hemp. And so I just threw up a little, like, it's like 9x48 greenhouse 2 years ago. And then the hemp was just like, whatever, that wasn't worth my time for the market. I didn't have a market at all for it. So last year, I just said, fuck it. And I put one giant bed down the middle with like a shit ton of compost because I got a pretty giant compost pile going back there. So I made this bed that's like, it was probably 3-4 feet tall and like 40 feet long and like 6 feet wide. Just of like, my compost is basically horse manure and mushroom blocks that I get from Detroit Mushroom. And I just let that cook for a year. But I made this bed last year in the spring, like brand new bed on the ground. And I got the plants out probably about 2 weeks ago last year, you know, this time, 2 weeks ago this time last year. And yeah, I put 10 plants in that greenhouse, 40-foot bed, and I had to take the plastic off of the greenhouse. And then I put trellis. I just took the plastic off and put trellis in the wiggle wire at the ends of the greenhouse over the top, and they grew 4 feet past that. So that's the Boscotti from Soulfire Gardens. That's what those giant plants are. And yeah, I I was just like, oh, I'm like, holy fuck, it worked.
I don't usually do this very often, but I'm going to do it with this one here. I'm just going to go ahead, in case they're lazy, I'm just going to go ahead and screen share this carcass right quick because it's beautiful. So
yeah, and like
that's what we're talking about right there.
Yeah, and like I couldn't put my hand like the bottom underneath where those connect. It was like two hands basically. It's hard to do justice really with a picture, but yeah, that was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, that's amazing, my friend. All right, real quick, I can think. Yeah, here's the greenhouse you're speaking of, right?
Right. Yeah, it's about 9.5, 10 feet at the top of the hoops. So yeah, they were monsters.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, that was
work,
that got real tricky real quick towards the end of the season. I was just like, okay. Like, how the fuck am I gonna harvest all this? It was a quick trick.
Yeah.
Income fresh
awesome,
frozen. That's when I started learning about that. People are like, dude, just freeze it. And I'm like, okay, then we can make hash out of it. I wasn't planning to do that at all. I just had so much last year, and I was like, okay, I'll just take all the tops off for flour and put the rest for hash. I mean, I have a full 72 plants out there, so that was just one greenhouse.
You know, since I was thinking, man, should I dive into this now or should I kind of wait for it later? But I might as well we'll just roll. We'll just roll with wherever it goes,
you
right?
You can go back and forth,
so,
whatever you want to do.
So I think that's a lot of what drove a lot of the hash industry, to be honest with you, both in color and in style, was the bigger growers not being able to keep up with harvest and going, we're just going to throw it in the fucking freezer and,
it makes sense.
extracts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always just did like trim and had like my processor buddies run trim and stuff like that before, but I never dedicated like actual bud to concentrate. And then I was like, well, I can get into the solventless thing, like, compared to trying to get into a BHO lab, which I don't even want to do anyway. It's like the solventless is pretty affordable relatively, So I just bit the bullet and, dropped the first part of harvest on all the stuff I needed and said, fuck it, let's go. And the price of flour is dropping. The hash is about the only thing getting a decent price these days. So I figure that's going to go down too. I might as well get on the train now, and I love smoking it. So
I do as well. So with that being said, I guess we'll jog back or start from where we usually do here, and that's when and where did you come in contact? When did you first started using cannabis? If you don't mind sharing.
yeah. Let's see. I think like the first time me and my buddies got a little bit of nug was like 8th grade, and we tried to like roll it up in a gum wrapper or something. Like we had no idea what we were doing, and it didn't work at all. And so I ended up down in Ohio for a while in like high school time and the end of middle school. I grew up in Michigan. I'm in Michigan now, so we just moved around a bit. And so like weed was different down there. Like when I was learning about weed and started smoking and everything, I was down there. And so there was no like dispensaries or any kind of medical anything. And so like probably freshman year of high school, we started getting it here and there. And then like by sophomore year, I was pretty much into it heavy. Not heavy, but as much as you can be in high school. We get out of class and go fucking get a 20 sack between 4 people, roll it up and go smoking, driving around and smoking. As soon as we had cars, that was just pretty much what we did. Yeah, I got busted like sophomore year. I was 15, and they pretty much like, it was the stupidest thing. We were just smoking in the back of a parking lot, and somebody like called the cops. They thought we were robbing the store or something, and they let all my friends go except for me. And they took me downtown, because I had a pipe. Like I made a pipe out of like PVC or something, and it was like all rigged up. I had like a paint job on it and everything. It was custom. And they're like, "Did you steal this from the store?" I'm like, "Dude, it's like completely no. I didn't steal this from the store." So they fucked with me. And I was 15, so they like made me do all this stupid shit, because I wasn't 18 yet. But I had to take all these classes and do all this shit. And then basically by the time somehow I never ended up taking a piss test, which I still have never taken a piss test. Steer clear. Yeah. So after that, as soon as I like was allowed to like get out of the house again, I was only 15, so I was in a lot of trouble. Then after that, it was pretty much game on. Yeah, never stopped since then. Good times.
That's awesome. The cocky person in me would have had a hard time resisting going. Take me to the aisle where they sell these. Where can I get this pipe at in the store? Show me that spot.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally did too. I was like, "Are you kidding me right now? Like, what is this?" Like he was just pissed off because it wasn't what they thought it was. They're like, "Oh, it's just some fucking dopers back here." Like guilty.
Right. So
Whatever.
I guess my next question would be, how would you describe, I guess, your reaction to cannabis at that point? Was it more or less kind of a recreational type thing, just kind of do it hanging out with friends? Or did you necessarily kind of realize that there was a little more something to it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like in high school, after that point, like, because when I got busted, it was pretty early on still. I was still just like we're getting stoned. This is like very new and attractive and cool. I didn't think about anything more past that yet. You know, we were just starting to get drunk and stoned, and it was like, fuck yeah. But then, like, towards the end of high school, I was definitely like, yeah, getting deeper and deeper into the culture and everything and the music, and just like, okay, these are cool people. This is not a bad place to be. You know, you could be doing a whole lot worse shit, right? And then, yeah, into college, things got a little warbly.
Do you remember what you were able to get your hands on at that point?
We had mids or beasters. And it was basically, yeah, everything was full of season stems. Like, although actually later, like senior year of high school, I started getting like, I had this new hookup, and he was getting like the train wreck and the Death Star, and like the dumpster Death Star in Ohio. And I keep hearing people talking about that stuff now, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally smoked that shit way back in the day, and it was fire. But like 90% of the time then in high school, it was all just, you know, mids. $20 for a gram probably, or whatever it was, 4 blunts. Might have been, it was $20 an eighth probably. I think that's right.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah. Then into college, it started changing, getting into the like $45-$50 an eighth stuff. And that's like what I used to like fucking buy ounces at crazy prices, and, you know, flip like just eighths, you know, just little amounts so I could smoke then. And it was just like, I think about it now, and I'm like, holy fuck, I'm almost selling a pound for this price. It's like, Jesus Christ. Shit was crazy then.
You know what's funny, or at least in my opinion, about differently from today to back then. If you could fucking find the guy that had that fire, he wouldn't let you leave with that fucking QP or pound. It was multiple parts, straight zips, and they didn't want you to fucking get too much of it. You know what I mean?
No,
It wasn't like everything else where the mids where they'd be like, take as much as you can get. You know what I mean? You come
get
back
it out of here.
twice in a day for the good stuff, they would be like, man, come on, man, slow down. Give everybody a chance on this shit. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
Mm. So what were we looking at in the college time then? What was the goods at that point?
Shit. Like when I started, it was like I was getting like $300 ounces or something. And, you know, flipping it at like 50 an eighth just to smoke. And then it started escalating. Like basically it was just, I had a bunch of roommates that I lived with, and, you know, I was the guy that went and got the weed, and we all smoked, and we all just like threw in money. And then my guy was like, he's like, here, take this much. And I'm like, well, I don't have enough for that. And then like 2 days later, I was like, oh, I got it now. He just kind of, you know, that dude has been helping me out ever since. He's the man. He was like the first one I really saw grow any real weed too. That was the other thing. I started growing weed as soon as as soon as we were out of the dorms, we grew some weed under like fucking, you know, all the lamps we could find in the house. It's like we didn't know we had like one fluorescent like T12 or whatever. We just like had some seeds, and we didn't know what we were doing. We just did it, and it was terrible. And then, you know, I've done it every time ever since. Now it's getting pretty good. You know, 10 years later.
Yeah. As we can see from the Instagram there, for sure. So T12s or T5s, what did you say there? There's
Oh
a
no,
huge
it
difference.
was like a single bulb, you know, it wasn't no grow light or anything. It was just like shit we had. And then we're like, oh, it needs more light. So we like, you know, went and grabbed all the lamps in the house and like tried to like fucking light it up. And like, yeah, that's That's not how you do that. And then I like, the next time I kind of like was like, okay, maybe I need like a better light. And then I got like one of those old like gym halogen lights, like the 400-watt metal halide. It's like got the big cone on it. I got one of those for like $40 or something. And like reconfigurated it so it was like a grow lamp kind of. And then I was like, okay, I got the light. And then I cooked the plants because I didn't have any kind of like, air exchange or like temperature control or anything like that. I just had a 400-watt lamp and it cooked plants. I was like, okay. Like it started to work, but my room was hot as fuck. So I was just like, whatever. And at this point, I was kind of just like doing all this for like fun, on the side. Cause like I saw my buddy doing, he was like, get some good weed. I'm like, okay, I could do that. But it wasn't like I wasn't all in yet. And then like I had a good year doing shit and I got some like real grow lights and like a tent and I was like, okay. And then the plants grew and I was like, okay. I still fucked up a bunch of shit, but they started getting big and having big buds on them. And I was like, this could work. And then like the next year, it was like, okay, I got a real harvest. I had a sour diesel plant. This dude gave me some seeds, a bunch of random shit, and it was a sour diesel one, and that thing was like, I was like, this is like real fire. Like I could smoke this. I would be very happy to buy this and get it in a bag, And then I sold that, and then I bought more grow lights, and then I'm like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And then I moved to Michigan. Back to Michigan. So that was all happening like, not in Michigan.
So are you what are we using for a medium at this point? Are we already in soil, cocoa?
Yeah. I mean, I think like the first two was probably just like fucking Miracle Grow or something, whatever they had, I just went to the fucking hardware store. But then yeah, I got into cocoa and I had like a 2-part like Black Label or something. I don't know. There was a grow store down in Covington, Kentucky, across the border. There were some cool dudes there. But yeah, just like cocoa and 2-part. And then like I got into like I don't know, I bought like a bunch of shit on Craigslist because I was like cheap as fuck and didn't have any money, So I got like this dude was growing and he just had like, a tent and like some random lights and like a bunch of leftover nutrients. So I kind of like filled out that line and ran that. I think it was the Psycho nutrients and that shit. Like I got it all right and that stuff came out fire. That was like my first really good run. I was like, whoa, okay. But I didn't know a lot about plants or growing at that point, I was just doing it to get weed. And then like as I was learning, I'm like, okay, this is like I was just getting more and more interested and involved and like caring way more about everything. So yeah. I don't know. I think I was probably in cocoa the first year I was in Michigan too, in my little indoor. I think after the first regen conference was probably when I really switched everything over. I'm trying to think, I don't even remember when I went all organic.
So did your relationship change with cannabis after you started cultivating it, or did it stay kind of on the recreational side?
No, like even before I started growing it, I just got more and more into it. Like it still hasn't stopped, like I just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and I'm all for it. It's like it keeps me interested. So like if that's what I'm doing every day and I'm still curious and interested, that's that's better than a lot of things I could think of being bored. But yeah, the more I grew, the more I'm like, okay, this is fucking awesome. Like it's like when you have to go to cut down your first couple like harvests, it's like the feeling you have when you have to like cut down this plant, you've been like, okay, I got it good. And now it's like, I'm about to fucking kill this thing, Whereas now I'm just like, let's go. I know what's gonna happen. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna smoke it, you know. But it's just, yeah. The more you do that, the more you get used to it, right?
For sure, for sure. So I always, joke about the seriousness of organics, kind of. It's very deep rabbit hole there. So, you know, I often kind of wonder to myself a little bit when I'm talking to like a newer grower, when I should suggest, diving deep into organics or starting with organics. Because for me, it was cannabis has been a fun journey for sure, but there's definitely been plateaus where it's just kind of seemed almost like another day of work. You know what I mean? Kind of in
Oh,
the
for
same
sure.
cycle. But then again, there's been uh, things that kind of pique my interest, different techniques, different this, different that. Of course, there's always the option of breeding and stuff like that. So there's a lot of avenues to look into. But once you open that organics road now, that's I don't think that's something that you ever finish up on. So I'm almost like this close, like, I appreciate soil and the simplicity of it all, but do I want to like open the door for a beginner grower right there, organics right off the get? You know what I mean? And
I
I
mean,
don't know.
if they never know anything else, you know, it might not be hard.
Yeah, true, true, true.
You've been doing
But
it the way
again,
you've been
I
doing it probably forever, and you're like, you know, that's how you do it. It works. It's good. There's why, you know, why fuck with it. And
true.
you know, I'm all for it. However it works is how it works. It doesn't matter. Especially indoor, you know, it's like you can do like the full on living soil inside and it's fucking awesome. But it's like it's still not outside. Like you know, you don't have all those extra organisms and all the relationships that happen out there, but it's still great. But at the same time, you can fucking grow in cocoa and two part and grow fire weed. You know, it's not. It might not be as complex. It might not. You know, who knows? But I've smoked so much weed, dude, and so much of it has been salt nutrients grown, and like there's definitely good weed. I prefer organic, and I think it definitely has like there's like a complexity in the flavor. I don't know if that's outdoor organic, a combination of the two. You know, there's just so many factors. I'm not real picky though.
Neither am I. That's for sure. I enjoy cannabis in any shape or form that I can get it right there with you. I get a lot of what you're saying though, the indoor versus outdoor thing. For me, as of late, I'm kind of stuck on, I get there's a lot of, this full spectrum of the sun, the little bit of stress, wind, other pressures to the plant. But a lot of it, I think, too, the difference between indoor and outdoor, I say this quite a bit, is people aren't as patient. Indoor, that shit's like fucking too many people go by that calendar, man. Day 70, pull that shit.
Dude, I
Well,
I have
that's
literally
not
never gone
always the
by a number.
case. No, not me neither. Me neither. But
People always
I
ask me like,
honestly
"What day
think
are you on?" I'm like, I have no fucking clue, dude. Like, I just look at the plant.
that's the best way. It's the
Yeah,
best way.
it'll tell you what's going on.
And I think that's got a lot to do with the indoor and outdoor right there is people, when it's outdoor, you're thankful for every day of an extension. You know what I mean? You're
Oh yeah,
trying to take it as long as possible. It's quite the opposite from the indoor. Indoor, I think people are pulling way too early. So I think that's got a lot to do with the quality from indoor to
dude.
outdoor as a natural ripening of the plant.
Yeah, and I've talked to a couple people about this, and I did an indoor run last year in here, and I hadn't done it indoor since I went outside like 3 years before that because I was just like, there's so much to learn for the outdoor. I don't even want to fuck with the inside anymore. I'm like, what am I doing in here? You know, it's like I got so much room out there. There's the sun, like works great, you know. But I did an indoor grow and I kind of like am in the outdoor like long grow cycle like mentality. And I had my plants inside and I just kept vegging them, got them huge as fuck. And people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, and flipped them. And then they like took them forever. And I'm like, man, they're like, have you harvested yet? I'm like, no, I don't know. They're not ready. And I just let them go. I had 6 plants in like 15-gallon pots. And dude, it tasted so fucking good. I don't know. Somebody was telling me about like the veg time. Like if you shorten the veg time, then the plant might not like go through all its phases, you know, in its veg state. Like if you like something's happening there that it might like change like the basis that it goes off of. So like when it goes into flower, it starts changing. But if it's in veg and it's like you switch it early, it doesn't have like everything built yet or something like that. So like that affects the flavor and it's like gives it just more complexity if you let it just like veg as long as it wants to, which if you're growing under the sun, that's pretty much just what happens no matter what. You don't really have a choice.
I 100% agree with that, especially from seed. I've been tested for a very long time, and breeders push for that report a lot of times on that first run as quick as they can get it. I've always been the first one to argue, hey, you need a few cycles to get an accurate description. You know what I mean? The first run, it's got, it's starting to, express a lot of stuff, but it isn't until the second run I find for multiple reasons that I can give an accurate description and report on the strain
For sure. Yeah.
for for exactly what you're saying there.
Mhm.
So do you, and you said you started most of your stuff from seed. Do you start everything from seed?
No. So like 2 or 3 years ago, I had the bright idea of just popping all seed from like bud that I grew the year before. Cause like there's always something gets pollinated or something outside, you know, there's always a few seeds here and there. And I don't really know where they're coming from, honestly, if they're just herming or there's always something though. So I just like popped all those seeds the next year, or like that's all I popped. And I got like all these fucking crazy herm plants and all this shit. And I was like, and like a bunch of males. And I was like, oh, I was down to like 50 plants and I'm like running out of time. And so I'm like scrambling for clones. I had like little tiny plants in and shit just to try and, recoup the space. And so after that, and the year after that, now I'm like, usually I have at least like enough clones just to fill out my numbers, plus all the seeds I pop, just as like backups. So like if I get something crazy happens outside, because there's like shit eats them out there, all sorts of shit can happen. You got to pull a plant out, and I like to have a couple ready to pop in the spot. So yeah, and I have a bunch of clones that are like really great stuff. I have some first class funk. I have some ice cream cake that was like won the Emerald Cup flower. And my buddy went out there and like got the cut from this dude for some crazy amount of money and whatever. I don't know. He's like, this is the best, whatever. So I got that. It's delicious. Ice cream cake, beautiful. Um, but my favorite thing that I got last year, my neighbor, he's a little older. He's been around. He's just like a awesome gardener. He does everything super old school. He's been growing his own weed for like 20 years. He just grows a few plants, but he has like all his own pollen, all his seeds, everything. And he like one of his buddies had this cherry that I guess he's been growing for like 20 years, some sort of cherry. And he just like left 2 clones on my back porch in solo cup. They were like from an arrow cloner, so they were just like rooted in water. And I come home and there's 2 clones on my back porch. That's kind of how he rolls. He just like leaves shit there. I'm like, what are these? And he's like, oh, this cherry, it's old. I don't know. The guy says great. I was like, okay. He's like he's like the clones have been rooted in like they're just rooted in an air clone and put in a cup of water. He's like, they've been in that cup for like 2 weeks. I'm like, what? Did you change the water? He's like, I don't think so. I added some. I mean, they were fine. I grew them, and honestly, that was probably my favorite weed that I grew last year. And I'm like, and somebody gave me some trop cherry, Casey at the last Freem event, and it was, I think that might be close to what it is, or that's in the lineage at least. Like, it tasted very similar. It had like, dude, after it was trimmed and like bagged up, that first couple of times you open up the jar or the bag or whatever after it's trimmed, and it's just like, dude, this stuff had like, it was like effervescent. It was like you like crack open a Sprite, like how it just like fizzles. Like had this strawberry, like I was just like, what the fuck is that? So I got a bunch of clones of that. I'm gonna grow way more of that this year.
So are you strictly outdoors these days? Are you at least starting them indoors
Yeah,
or?
no, I got my indoor room. I was gonna do a run, but then I just kind of started cloning and popping seeds, and so it just kind of turned into the full on veg room. So it's like full right now. I'm like just the weather basically is good now, so I'm getting beds prepped. Everything's pretty much. I got to get it out there into one greenhouse at least. And so I'll like close up the one greenhouse at night and make sure they're cool. Just leave them in pots until they're like hardened off out there. I got shade cloth on that, and so I basically just harden them off in the greenhouse under the shade cloth, and they're cool. They like that.
So you want to tell us a little bit on how you prep them outdoor spaces there? Are you beds this year? What are you doing to get those beds ready for this year's run? Uh, to grow some monster ass hardy plants like you're showing on the Instagram there. I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody would love to some tips for that shit.
Well, honestly, like that bed I built last year. I have my other beds are like 3-4 year hugel beds. So they got like the logs underneath. So that's it. That stuff's really starting to every year it gets easier basically, because everything's starting to break down and like really just meld together. So it's just like and I'm on like hard ass clay. So like the first couple beds I tried to like dig down and like do the hugel beds like that with the logs, and I dug about 3 beds and was like, fuck this. There's like no point because you're digging into clay, and then like when it rains, the hole is just like a pot basically. So it just fills up with water. So like whenever it rains, like if there's any holes here, it just fills up with water, right? So I just started going like, fuck it, I'll just build up. And so now like that bed that I built last year isn't even a hugel bed really. I put like 4 yards of sand down first because there's like no sand here. It's all just like hard. And my thought is that the sand eventually will, the worms and shit will work it into the clay. Because like clay plus sand equals like pretty decent texture, right? And so then I put the sand down first, and it helps just like level it out kind of. And then I put like probably like 16 yards of my compost, probably more than that, on last year. And then I did the 12 seed cover crop from Build a Soil. I have a big bag of that. It's like mostly clover, like field peas or some other stuff in there, and it's all good. And so I get that cover crop going like on the compost, right? So like I got fresh compost down. I like shape the bed and I throw that seed down and water the whole bed, like seed the whole entire bed. And then that shit starts growing. And then I kind of like once that started like really going, the whole thing's basically green. And then I kind of like shaped out some holes, like I got like 10 holes in this bed, and I kind of just like spread the cover crop. And I think I put some like organic amendments in last year because I had a bunch left over. And I'd say it definitely helped, but I don't think it needed any. I think I had probably too much nitrogen already from the compost because the compost is like a lot of horse shit and just like spent mushroom blocks and then like whatever else I throw in there that's around. And it's like real big pile, like probably 12 feet, 13 feet tall or something. I don't know. Many yards. So I got that bed going. I got the cover crop going. I put out the holes and then I like amended those holes and then just kind of like let it all chill for like a couple weeks, basically until I was ready to plant. And then when I went to plant, like I put those plants in and they went into those holes and all that shit was already like fucking working. Like the worms are everywhere, everything's thriving, right? It's like working those nutrients. The fucking cover crop has already like cycled some shit. It's starting to go. And then you put the plants in and it's just like, you know, they're ready to rock. That soil is just like anything you put in there, it was ready. So, and then from there, yeah, I just like cut the cover crop like regularly because in the spring and like coming into summer, once that shit starts going, it just like, and so I just like keep cutting it and dropping it and just leaving it right on there. And it just like mulches itself. And then once the plants get big enough and it's like later into the summer, it all kind of just stops anyway. So it's just like chilling at that point. So shit's not like growing up into your plants. And that's how you know, bugs and everything likes that. But there's everything's out there anyway. You're outside. So yeah, it's basically just keeping the plants happy is the best way to keep everything away from your plants, as far as I can tell.
Right on. Are you using any type of bokashi on to compost those manures? Are you just kind of using what you got in earthworm bins, or how you getting the
No,
manures ready?
so
Just age?
yeah. So I got a dump truck that's like this old fucking farm grain truck that was cheap as fuck. I wouldn't take it far, but it runs and it's got a huge bed on it. So I go to this dude down the road and he's got horses. And so he will fill this thing to the brim. And I got like, you know, that's like, I don't even know, like probably 15, 18 yards per truckload. And I get a couple of those. And then I get the Detroit mushroom dude like grows gourmet mushrooms and sells them to restaurants. And he's got to get these blocks that he grows them on out of there. And so I got him to start bringing them up here, which I have to pull the plastic off of the blocks, which is a pain in the ass, but the compost is money and mushrooms grow out of it, like fucking oyster mushrooms and chestnuts and shit, and you can eat them and they're delicious.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So like you can just take those blocks and like I'll just break them up on top of the beds too, like not for like compost, but then they'll just like the chunks will just grow mushrooms out of them and you can just, you know, have some lunch.
Pretty awesome.
But yeah, I
So
just
is
pile it
that's
all up.
where
I got a tractor.
Mount
Well, I was just gonna say I just pile it all up and I got the tractor and I mix it like I used to mix it like all the time, but now it's like a few times a year and I just let it sit for a year. So I have like the next pile working, getting ready to get going while this one's like I have a giant pile ready to go. And as soon as it dries up, basically is when I can start spreading it because it's kind of beyond shoveling a wheelbarrow for me anyway, because it's just me. So I use a tractor and a dump truck whenever possible. And it's fun.
no no harm in that. That's for sure. That's, in my opinion, working smart right there. So
Dude,
is
I've
that
unloaded enough truck
leading
beds.
up to how a home of Mount Mushmore? Is that, tell me about Mount Mushmore.
That basically just the Detroit mushroom kept coming up with all the mushroom stuff, and I just made this pile and started calling it Mount Mushmore. I don't know, it's stupid. Just giant mushroom compost pile. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how do you, I guess, I appreciate the Hugo style, but most of the time I hear more referenced as a mountain. But it sounds like you actually dug yours down into a pit.
Well, I mean, I dug down like a foot into the clay and just like put the logs down and then just like piled up stuff as much as I could on top of that. But like, so like my two big outdoor beds, they're probably like 50 feet each or something like that. Those ones I just put cardboard down and put the logs on top because it's like, what's the point in digging into this clay? It's just nothing but trouble. Why fight it? So I just pile on and let the worms do the digging. They'll break through that shit.
Oh man, for me up here where I'm at, quite the opposite. I think you could dig for quite some ways before you hit that clay, man. Nothing but sand.
Yeah, that's what, dude. It's crazy. All the people like on the West Coast too, like Grand Rapids area, everyone over there, which is like a lot of the weed growers I talk to, and everyone's on sand, and I'm like, man. They're all like, man, this sand is terrible. I'm like, you should try clay. Yeah, but it's like one way or the other, right? Oh, it's something.
So, do you use any type of companion or banker planting in the greenhouse or around the greenhouse?
I just let the cover crop run, which is really, I guess, a companion plant. Because I'm growing it while the weeds there. So I just like continuously chop and drop it. I mean, I have like a couple like random shit planted around in the beds, like iris and comfrey and shit like that. But I haven't really, I don't know, put a ton of effort into trying to grow other stuff with the weed. I just grow the cover crop. I just let that run and chop and drop it, and I figure that's just like cycling the nutrients under the soil, and it's like you're chopping it, so it's mulch, and it's like green mulch, and it's like cooking, and everything's just fucking working. Just keep that cycle going.
Well, whatever you're doing, it works well. That's for sure. You definitely have some impressive plants on your page. That's for sure. I see
Honestly,
that dump truck now.
fuck yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say honestly, after I did what I did last year with that giant bed, just basically all compost, I was like, okay, that seems to work really good. And that was the easiest one I built. So it's like, fuck. I still would like to put logs underneath. I was just out of time, and I just wanted to get that bed done and see how that ran. And it definitely worked out. More compost, and the compost is good. It's just full of fucking worms.
So, have you ever thought about doing any type of breeding at some point?
That's pretty much like the only thing I haven't like really delved into yet. I don't know why, but it just seems like it's like so hard with everything going on as it is. I can only imagine trying to keep all that shit straight. But yeah, as time goes on, it's something I definitely think about more and more. Just because it would be beneficial for like me growing here personally. Just like breeding for what grows right here. So it makes sense, right?
Where that? Where that?
I'll probably get there eventually.
So, how deep are you into the organics or the regenerative practices so far? Like we've talked about, man, it's a pretty deep hole, man. So
Yeah,
I guess how deep are we in it at this point?
pretty fucking deep. Yeah. I don't know. Basically my goal is to just not have to buy anything from a grocery store. And I'm pretty close. Pretty much the only thing I buy right now, which I probably could not do, but it's basically just like for clones at this point, just because it's easier. and I don't always have everything ready when I'm ready to do clones. So like as far as my soil outside and all that stuff, if it's like winter or whatever, I can just go grab some cubes and fucking throw them in a dome. And that's pretty much at this point, aside from like trellis and like even that, I'm looking at different ways to tie up the plants. But when they're that fucking big, man, it's like, whew, and it's super windy here. So, man, it would be hard to not have a trellis with plants that size. I don't see how it would work. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I'm all about the organic soil, like, because like I started getting into it because I'm fucking cheap, and I didn't have a ton of money, so I was just like looking for different ways to do it, like basically not spending all my money at the grocery store. It's like, man, you start buying stuff like, oh yeah, that'll work good, that'll help, right? I'll buy some of that. I'm like, that's not gonna work for me. And people are talking about like, oh, you just need compost, So I started like little compost stuff, it's like, man, this seems like it's gonna be pretty hard. But then once I went outside, it's like everything kind of started to click. I was like, oh, okay, this is totally different. Because I had been growing inside until like 4 years ago, I guess 3 or 4 years ago. And it's like, dude, going from inside to outside is like, what a fucking shock. Inside you like got everything under control, right? You see some shit going on, you take care of it. Outside is like, oh, I'm like, back there in a field, like surrounded by woods, there's fucking bugs everywhere. The first time I was just like, oh, fuck. Like, look at all these bugs. How am I going to get rid of them? Right? Like, you're not. That's not how this works. You just got to kind of like see, shit happens outside and then like other shit happens and takes care of problems. And as long as nothing gets out of balance, it like works pretty fucking good. Even like
That
if I
is
see
the
some,
regenerative mindset, right?
yeah, for sure. And it's yeah, you can run into issues for sure. And then it's like, well, how do I get out of this without going and buying some shit and nuking it or doing whatever, right? But I just keep doing it. I just got into the Jadam stuff last year and I made a bunch of like the soap, the wedding agent, which is great, honestly. And it's cheap as fuck to make on your own. Again, I'm like, so like pesticides was the last thing outside where I'm like, I gotta have something I can spray on the regular that's not, gonna fuck shit up. I don't want like chemicals, but you gotta keep on stuff at certain times of year outside. So I started making my own, and I was like, okay, this is like pretty good. And the wedding agent is great. You can mix that shit with anything. Yeah.
A lot of that stuff I've had some interest in anyway, the labs in particular.
Yeah, I need to get
That's
on
one
that.
that because I'm cheap myself. I'm pretty cheap myself. I can't believe I haven't, for those reasons alone, kind of went more down that road. But something that
It's a
I'm
it's a
like,
whole fucking
something I
rabbit
can,
hole, man.
yeah, yeah, I can heal myself with that. My plants love it. It can be a cleaner. Damn, that's an all-purpose one right there, man.
Sales
So
pitch is
yeah,
solid.
it is. It is. And then Chris Trump was supposed to be on. He had a mix up right before the show and wasn't able to come on, but we've rescheduled. And so just because he's not a cannabis user, but more or less, preaching good techniques to the community, basically, in most cases, pro bono, tons of respect. I didn't want to play the fool when he came on. So I spent the day like boning up interview after
Yeah.
interview after interview. And
Oh, dude, he has so much good content too.
it was pretty eye raising. You know what I mean? I may be quicker to be venturing down that road than I thought. You know what I mean? He
Oh,
makes a lot
oh
of
yeah,
it seem pretty easy.
dude, yeah. And I've watched tons of his videos, and at the last Regen conference up here, I got to talk to him, and I was like, man, He's the man. Super down to earth. He gets it, and he knows all the stuff, and he won't, tell you not to do anything. He'll tell you why this works, and whatever you're doing probably works too. That's just, do what works. Do what you want. But yeah, he definitely makes it very accessible, I feel like, with the videos. Because I've done a ton of his videos. Like I have the water soluble calcium. I tried the IMO with the rice collection a couple of times. I think I'm gonna do it this year though. I need to like buckle down and get it done because that's like, he says it in a ton of the videos, and he told it, he said it the same thing. It's like 70 to 80% of it is get the IMO and get that shit on everything. And then from there it's just, you know, toppings, the accoutrements.
Yeah, it's definitely a deep process. That's kind of why I asked, early on, when do you introduce that to the newer grower, right? Because,
Yeah,
at some point I've had this discussion a lot. And it's hard to, I think, for some people to swallow because there's such a great info out there. If you from prior days of learning to grow cannabis, they didn't really teach, the deep organics rabbit hole. It wasn't necessarily how the plant works. It was,
right.
technique, most cases, cocoa, A, B, whatever. This is what you do.
Yep.
And most people jumped on. Easy to understand. But I think, with organics, for a beginner grower, I've argued the point it can be quite, confusing. You know what I mean? So many technical terms. I think a lot of people that if that were be the starting point, they may just go, holy fuck.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready for this. I'm just gonna go to the dispo. You know what I mean? To
Right.
where I think that may be a step, more of a connoisseur step. It's a wonderful process to get started in. You know what I mean? But it can be if you go, hey man, here's organics, boom, 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 boom. Here's a few books. They may not, get
Oh
started
yeah.
for a year or two, if not ever.
Oh no.
you know,
I have books that I haven't finished. Trust me. Some of them are dry. But you can still go to the store and get a bag of like at least organic soil, right? And it's just got all the mix in it. It's still amended and everything. It's not like a living soil, but I've used stuff like that. That's what I usually, if I don't have something ready to go, I'll go grab a bag of something and just throw clones in just a pot up, because it's easy, throw them in there. It's organic. You just add water. Like I don't pretty much feed my bedroom at all. Like I just give them water and like, a little micro boost here or there if I feel like it. They look like they need it. But yeah, I mean, there's different levels of organic, right? Like you can go all the way down, or you can just go buy the shit at the store. If you're gonna buy shit anyway, you can just buy the organic shit. You know, it's not the same, but at least you're starting on that side instead of the other side, right? And then if you want to go further, you can like, maybe make a tea or like, get some microbes.
right on, right on.
Some compost on there.
Put some compost on that shit.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So I guess what about the on the hash side of things? When we did that, the appreciation for the love for the hash side of things start on.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it just started with pretty much back in school. The buddy that I was getting stuff from. He was in like chemistry in the college, so he was like learning how to like do fractional distillation like in school, and then he would like come home and do the same thing. And so he was just like had his lab and he was making dabs and like at that time, like he was the only only ones I knew that had any. And then anytime I got anything else back then, it was just like pretty much black, you know, like real dark brown, like just, you know, and that was just BHO, not really hash, right? That's just like blasted stuff in the earlier days. And then his stuff, like every time he gave me something for like 4 years, is like every single time it got better. And I'm like, it can't possibly get any tastier than this. The next day, I'm like, holy shit, it can't possibly get any tastier than. And now he's doing hash too, like the ice water, rosin, everything. And he's killing it because he just, you know, has such a good understanding of like trichomes and like the resin inside and everything going on. So he's taught me a lot. And basically last year, I just got into all the stuff that I needed to make rosin, ice hash, and the whole bit. And so, yeah, basically the last like 6 months, I've been deep diving and learning as much as I possibly can, watching every video, you know, listen to everything I can on hash, just trying to learn. And yeah, it came out pretty good. Turns out, like, you know, there's definitely a lot to learn, and I have a ton to learn still in the actual process of like washing and pressing, but it's, you know, it's not rocket science. And like everyone says, it's like the hard part is the material, right? It's like you got to grow good weed first, otherwise you could be the best washer and presser there is. It's not gonna it's not gonna taste as good. But yeah, I'm literally just getting started, so I don't want to sound cocky. I'm just happy that it came out good, and I was like, cool, this is gonna work, right? I can keep doing this. And then, you know, having rosin on tap is kind of dangerous for somebody like me. I like to smoke a lot. It's delicious though, and I'm happy I'm making it, so that's great. You know, I don't have to go anywhere for that. That's like my whole thing. I don't want to have to leave the farm if I don't have to.
That
Make it
is
all.
the dream,
Yeah.
isn't it? To be self-sustained. You know, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not very good at all that. I'm getting pretty good at growing the weed, but as far as like vegetables and all that, I'm working on it. It's not that I can't do it. Like obviously I could make it happen. It's just the time and the I'm bad with all that. I like drinking beers and smoking weed, you know, hanging out.
There's nothing wrong with those things.
That's what I'm saying.
At that point, I think it becomes a barter thing at some point. Isn't that how the community is necessarily supposed to be set up? You know what I mean? Through the barter system. You grow tomatoes, I'll grow weed. At the end of the season, we'll do a little swap.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've learned though weed is like, you know, has a little more bargaining power, you know. You can get more than just vegetables with it. You got all sorts of good stuff. You find the right people. Yeah, all about it.
So true. So true. So I guess it's a fair question with all those mushrooms blocks laying around. To indulge on some of the fun ones, not necessarily the healthy ones. They're quickly becoming, you know,
Oh,
putting more and more to the forefront.
I would argue they are very healthy.
I agree.
They have far-reaching health benefits that we are just learning. Yeah, I'm all about it for sure. It's yeah, I like bringing people into the fold too, if at all possible. You know, just microdosing is very interesting. It's great, and it's just good to get, you know, people that are like scared of it, because there's a lot of people that are just like have the preconceived notions that it's like you're gonna trip and you're never gonna come back. You know, and it's like you know, it's not like that. Like you're drinking a whole bottle of vodka, you're just taking a sip. You'll be okay.
Well, I think a lot of that too is the from the acid scare. You know what I mean? Oh, that shit will build up on your spine. You'll take a
Oh
trip
yeah.
and you'll never come back.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
there was a
not the
whole
case with
campaign to make sure
mushrooms.
people were scared. It's like there's a reason.
Yeah. If you indulge too hard on the mushrooms there, it's gonna expel itself one way or another.
Oh yeah,
you're you're not going out like that.
right. Yeah, yeah. You'll probably feel surprisingly good afterwards. That's the craziest thing to me, man. Whew. You're like next day you've been going all night and you're like, man, I was like, I feel pretty good. That's not normal. Fucking magical.
Right, Ed. Do you have some favorites? Or which are some of your favorites, I should say?
Of mushrooms or
Yes.
what? I don't
Yeah,
know. I like them
down the
all.
line. Healthy or recreational slash
Oh,
medical?
yeah. Well, yeah, I eat more recreational slash medical ones. I like all of them, but you know, and like the ones the Detroit mushroom dude grows, ooh, he's got like best mushrooms in town. I like pretty much hadn't eaten any like real gourmet type mushrooms until I started getting the shit from him, and I like started cooking like lion's mane and like all these oysters up, and I was like, dude, these are like it's a whole different thing. They all got different flavors. Pink oysters, the golden oysters, the chestnuts are like nutty, dude. Yeah, that stuff's delicious. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the psychedelic type. I like putting them into like different chocolate bars and stuff like that, so you can kind of keep track. Just break off a little square. It's good. Or you
I
just have a
find the
whole.
chocolates are quicker hitting and they almost have more intensive effect when they're mixed with the chocolate.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's definitely different. It works great. I think it's very effective. Yeah, and I like to like I'll grind up like a whole big batch and make like everything with the same batch. So then it's like piece to piece, it's pretty consistent. Whereas like if you eat a mushroom and then you eat another mushroom, you could have completely different effects, just because there's different amounts of stuff and it's not necessarily like the bigger ones more. So it's like I like to have it like real consistent. I don't know. It's fun. I think it's good for mankind.
I definitely encourage it. I've actually talked with other like YouTubers that do this type of, show or whatever. And I've told them we're flat out, half the at least my secret is mushrooms. Yeah, there's a like I can't tell you how many episodes they'll be like, that was a good one. I'll be like, mushrooms.
Mushrooms. Oh yeah.
Yep,
Oh yeah.
that was a good one. Mushrooms again. Yeah. Tripping balls through that one. It's only had like one or
Balls.
two times where it's been like ill ill onset where you could just kind of like look right into the depths of the camera and like kind of panic.
Huh?
Other than that, one time it was just that. It was like I could just like it was just like an endless tunnel looking into that thing, and it was like
Like, oh, right.
little, yeah,
People are
it kind of
watching.
kept fucking, yeah, it kept fucking with me a little bit there. And the other one was I was getting ready to like wrap up a show. I was on like a panel show. And I seen it coming, and that fucking train, that like little red eye in the camera was coming at me like a freight train. You could just kind of see it just. And I was like, I didn't even say anything. I just bailed. I was like, yep, click.
And we're out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Had enough of that shit. You can get me like that. It's basically what I thought.
Yeah, I got to turn this red light off.
Good times,
Oh,
though,
that's
man.
funny.
Good times.
Oh yeah.
So, do you try to? Well, I guess you've already kind of threw that out there that you're laying them on the bed. But do you think more and more growers could incorporate uh, growing mushrooms and cannabis? Synergy. Like in their indoor beds.
Yeah. I know there's people doing it. You can definitely inoculate, and like you could just have a block in your bed too, if you're trying to do it indoor. Um I know Jet House Garden, he's definitely done some mushroom stuff in the indoor living soil and very successfully. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, also like I got some blocks from Detroit Mushroom when had my indoor grow garden or my indoor grow going, and I was like, because I was looking at the CO2 mushroom blocks you can buy at the store. They release CO2, right? And I hit him up because I'm like, well, he's got a fucking million of these things, right? And he's like, yeah, here. And he gave them to me in their the Rishi. I think that's there. Rishi, right? Like crazy tentacle ones. I think that's right. But yeah, so those are like medicine on their own. So they're getting CO2 in the grow room, and then you can harvest them at the end. So like a win-win. And yeah, you could do it with any of them, really. I think oysters would work good. I don't know. I'm not super good on mushroom knowledge. I know how to like throw it together outside in my bed, but I'm definitely not the source of knowledge on it. Yeah,
Right. Well, we got to talk about something.
that's true.
So I guess back to the outdoor. Uh, how would you normally go about harvesting if everything were in a perfect world and not out of control? You know what I mean? Yeah. Do you like
I don't
prefer
even
to hang it and dry?
in a perfect world, I'd have a team of 20 people, and it'd be super easy. No, I don't know. Yeah, it's like
You got
every
me
year,
there.
Yeah, I don't have that. Uh, but yeah, pretty much every year, things escalate. So it's like every year I'm still trying to figure out how I'm gonna deal with everything. It's a challenge every time. I mean, I've always just like cut everything, hang it up, dry it, try and keep it from fucking getting crispy, basically, as I work through and you know trim it. Because I'm not like a machine trim guy, so I've always just dried and worked through it as I get to it. And then like the past couple of years, I've realized like if you like harvest it and you get it dry, however long you want to dry it, I like to go at least like minimum 10 days, but sometimes if I have room and I have time, I'll let them hang for a good long while, like a few weeks, as long as I have the temperature and humidity like in check, pretty decent, which I like to have it like pretty much like 60-60, right around there. I'll go lower if I have control. It depends on where I'm drying. Like sometimes if it's like I have to get a bunch of plants down, it's raining, I'll hang them out in the garage, and I just do my best to keep fans and keep them from. But if it's raining, it's not dry, so it's just humid anyway. So then it's just keeping fans on them, keep them from rotting, basically. But then yeah, dry them and just work through. So what I was saying is if you like buck them down, like not each nug, but like sections like little pieces of stock that you can get into a turkey bag basically pretty easily, and like defan everything. That's the other thing. I like to get all the fan leaves off basically whenever I can. Ideally, you could take them off first, but that's not really. Nothing happens ideally. It's always just do what you can when you can. But if you just take them and put them in turkey bags, defanned, still not trimmed, but like on the stalks, and you get them in the turkey bags and you can put them in totes. And like I have stuff from last year that's still like that in the totes in a room that's like 60% humidity and like 60 degrees. And then I have like that same bud trimmed and like vacuum sealed, like the same strain, compared to like the stuff in the turkey bag is like fresh still. Like you trim that up, you just do like a finish trim on it, and it's like fresh. Well, compared to the stuff that's been trimmed and vacuum sealed for like a month or 2 months or whatever, like you can just see where you've cut everything and trimmed it. It's like you can see the difference on the bud, like it's almost like bruised, kind of like you can see the little bit of oxidation, but like it's like that little bit of sugar leaf that you don't trim like just protects everything, I think, and it keeps them like they're not crispy at all. They're like nice moist buds, and they were harvested, you know, October ish, give or take. The other thing I do as I harvest is it depends on what I planted, but like usually everything's not ready at once. So I'll try and like if something's ready, I'll pull it early or like, compared to the rest and try and harvest in stages as much as I can, as weather permitting. Because usually it gets to a point where it's like, okay, well, it's gonna be snowing tomorrow, so it's time. Get the rest in. And that's like I've hung them in the barn, do whatever I got to do to just keep them from rotting. At the end of the season, that's always the fight, like just keeping stuff from rotting. And I've, always had to deal. I've always battled that. Like I feel like everyone does at some point. Even indoor, I've learned some lessons, pretty quick, drying stuff, and like, oh yeah, okay. Why is this rotting? Oh, I left the pot in the tent and it's wet. you know, Drying the stuff over a wet pot. The bud's all rotted. I was like, oh fuck, duh. Not paying attention to humidity. That was early on. I did that, but yeah, the rot outdoor in Michigan is. I mean, I know people that lost like 50% of their garden last year because they got pretty wily out there. It was wet for a long time, and there was just no like sunny, dry times. It just kind of kept getting worse. But I don't know. I did pretty good somehow. The plants were just healthy.
Nice. So I understand that there's a difference between, I guess, wanting a long-term cure and just a good season. It's where you have some left over, you know what I mean? So do you necessarily consider that to be a long-term cure? Obviously, it's been around for a bit. How much do you see it change from, you know, beginning freshly smoked to, as you're describing it in the turkey bag, pulling it out there? Has it changed at all in flavor?
I mean, it might depend on the strain, but like, dude, this grease monkey, I feel like it hasn't gotten worse at all. I just trimmed up like a pound or two of it not too long ago, and I have that, like once it's trimmed up, and I'm pulling it out of that room, I'll keep it in a jar, and then and it's like nice, squishy, and it tastes fucking phenomenal still. And I think, yeah, it's definitely just like curing in there. Something's changing, and it's not getting dried out. It's not getting fucked up. It's not like getting hot and shit. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, like it might be that like in the first like month or two is like everything changes, and then after that it's just kind of like solidifying, or not like getting hard, but like just the flavor is just like locking in longer and longer. I don't know. I didn't know like if it would be better or not. I figured the turkey bag would be or the vacuum seal bag would be the best, right? But I don't know. I think just keeping that humidity in the room right has definitely made a difference, because everything's just like nice still, and that's the goal. Like I like to try and do a big outdoor harvest and keep it as good as I can for as long as I can, even if it's for a year. Like that's fine. I'm not mad about it. Usually after a year though, it's getting to not be as good. You can tell. you get some fresh bud next to it, and you're like, okay, it's getting a little brown. But like you break it open and it's bright green still, and it's still got all the flavor, right? But it doesn't usually ever make it that long.
Well, I kind of asked because at one point, you kind of described, the flavor as being, like having like a bouquet to it. You know what I mean? It's kind of individual flavors. And for me, I feel at least again, for myself, I feel you get more of that bouquet on the fresher end. You know what I mean? Right, more freshly harvested, perfectly dried, ready to be jarred or long-term storage, but not necessarily long-term storage per se. I think as you put it in for that long time storage there, it's like throwing a bunch of clothes in a gym bag in my mind. You know what I mean? At some point, you're going to open that gym bag and it's all going to smell like socks. You know what I mean? Or cologne or whatever. It's all going to just bind together. It's harder to pick out the bouquet at that point. I think it just has that flavor and after a long-term cure.
Yeah, I mean, the grease monkey, I think it's not worse right now than it was when I harvested it. But like for me, usually it depends on the bud. Like I'll smoke it like, from right before it's done drying until it's like fully cured, like all the way through, right? And there's like a point in there when it's still like not dry all the way, or not like it's dry enough to smoke, but it's not like cured up at all. And it's like you get all the flavor, like it burns the back of your throat just a little bit because there's like a little bit of water in there still, right? So it's just kind of like a little harsh, but you get that like super fresh, all the fresh terp flavor. And you definitely lose that as it cures. But I think that's one of the things that you can capture with the live rosin, with like the fresh frozen material. Because like those terps are gone as soon as you hang the plant up. I feel like it's changing. And it might change for the better, but there's still that like fraction of terps that are there for a very short amount of time. And it's just cool that we can like capture them with the hash and like get a chance to really taste that. But like even with the hash, the different flavors come out, and some stuff like I ran the Boscotti like cured bud of it, and I had a bunch of fresh frozen material of it, but I had some cured stuff that it was like, you know, I wanted to just see what the difference was, and it tastes great as rosin too. And that was from cured bud, so I was like, okay, well that's cool. And it wasn't like it was a little different, but it wasn't worse. It was like the cure kind of changed the flavor a little bit. And I think for some strains that can be a good thing, and some it could be maybe not as good. Like I feel like the fruitier stuff in bud form like doesn't usually hold as long. But like whereas the grease monkey is like that real heavy terpene profile that's just like grease, and it's just like funk gassy and it just stays. And it's like when I smoke that in a joint, the beginning when you light it, like you get all that flavor. And sometimes like when I light up a roach of that, you'll be at the end of the joint, dude, and it's just like, how does this taste this good? Like what is going on here? Like you get to the end of the joint and it tastes as good as the beginning. That's something's going on there. But it doesn't happen with all strains, like no matter what you do. It's like the mono and sesquiterpenes.
What are some of your favorite strains? You've been smoking quite some time. By now you've had to go in. At least right now. I know that's hard because that's one thing I joke about, about popping seeds and holding on to that one. Everyone's the one until you pop that next seed and smoke it, and you're like, oh,
You're right.
maybe
Like,
not so special.
Yeah. So what was the question?
what would you say has been some of your favorite strains, or what is currently?
Yeah, I definitely like pretty much anything gassy, greasy, like Gorilla Glue. I really like. I had some Chem Dog that I grew a couple of years ago. I haven't had some good Chem in a while. I'm probably gonna try and get that back into the mix here soon. Cause that like super nasty Chem flavor is, I'm a fan. Basically, just like the grosser, stinkier terps, the better. The shit that like when you pop open the jar and you're like, ugh, ugh, that's what I want. What is this? Smoke some of that. uh, yeah, I don't even know, man. Like, I didn't even know any of the strains for like the first half of my weed career. I was just like smoking whatever there was. And then I grew a bunch of random shit too. I didn't, I grew bag seed for like the first 3 or 4 years because there wasn't like dispensaries and shit down there. It was just kind of like fucking dark ages still. I could have just looked up here and like found out so much shit I just didn't know. Like, whatever, I got some seeds, let's fucking run it, see what happens. That one sour diesel was one of the first like good strains that I grew that was just, wow, that was really good. I probably remember it better because it was one of the first good ones I had, but I don't know. This grease monkey I popped seeds of like last year indoor, and then I cloned all of them. Well, it was only 6 seeds, so I cloned them all and then kept the winners. Well, I planted a bunch outside and then I cloned all those. And then the one that ended up being the best, I didn't keep the clone of, like, of course. Like it didn't look the best inside, but then when I finished it outside, I was like, oh fuck, this thing is like a beast. I just didn't take it long enough inside. But yeah, that's pretty much how it goes, I feel like. I was like, oh, I should have kept that one. Well, the cherry that I grew last year, very big fan of. Also, the first class funk, I really, really liked. That shit was just greasy as fuck. It almost never even like it never got to the point where it was like dry. That shit was like you could barely even squeeze it, and after you were done trying to do that, you couldn't get your fingers apart because it was just like glued together. And yeah, the Boss Scotty and Dosey Mints last year, and the Apes in Space, really, were all just like super big, dense nugs. And I think I was listening to Kevin Jodry was talking about it. Like his farm's up on the mountain and it gets all this wind. He was talking about the wind and like the denseness of the nugs. And I was like, yeah, it's windy as fuck where I am, like pretty much the whole time. Which is why I have so much trellis because like shit just blows over. And yeah, the nugs, like I had some nugs where literally I squeezed it as hard as I could and it like barely budged at all. And people are like using like growth regulators. I'm like, no, I'm using the sun and the wind. like the outdoor stressors are very, very real. Like I feel like that plays a way bigger factor than a lot of people give it credit. Just like all the shit that goes on out there all the time. It's just like the plant has to constantly be trying to deal with it. And it's like people are usually focused on trying to make the environment like as perfect as possible, right? And just like give them no issues, like so everything's right. And then it's like it doesn't make the same plant, as a plant that has to like deal with shit nonstop. It's just like trying to fix stuff all the time. So it's like shooting out different hormones and doing different shit, and that's affecting the flavor for sure.
I 100% agree. And I'm a big advocate for it, and I've talked about it a lot. It's one of them things that at some point I don't even like to talk cannabis at some point, because if you talk some you you tell your techniques, and then there's people that come right back with, "Oh, that's bro science. You fuck that's you're doing it wrong." Well, that's cool. I'm glad you believe that, but I'm going to continue to do what I think I've done right so far. And I've always been an advocate for the stressing of plants being a good thing for terpene and trichome production. If you kind of go back and at any point and look at my Instagram, I don't support my shit until it needs to be supported. I like to actually let that plant actually come down and almost, I like to go right before I know if I've ran that plant a few times, I know its limits where it's gonna, fold that branch or snap right clean off. You know what I mean? At some point there has to be a catch there. But I like to take it as far as possible with that drooping of the plant and the fans. That's, there's so much to be said with that and the natural ripening of the plant, as we've already kind of discussed. Those factors right there are huge in the final finishing of your cannabis, I think.
Totally. Yeah, and I learned a like shit ton about just the natural plant structure when I did the hemp. But I planted like 250 or maybe 350 hemp plants by myself. I popped like 600 seeds, I think, into like little trays, and then pretty much like weeded through those and got the good ones into 1 gallon pots into that greenhouse that has the giant plants in it. Now it was just kind of like a nursery greenhouse that year because I just had all these 1 gallons and I wanted to make sure they were like not going to get fucked up until I got them into the ground, and I wanted to kind of like sex them as I could as soon as I could because they were just regular low X box seed, hemp seed, and so then I started planting fucking 1 gallons into the ground with a shovel like an idiot. And so about 2 weeks later, I was done doing that. And I'm like, okay, I was gonna do more, and then I got to that point. I'm like, let's just see how this goes before I break my back. Like 250, that should be enough. But then I basically gave them like a shovel full of compost, and I watered them like once or twice with a hose right in the beginning, basically when I put them in the ground, and that was it. That's all I did. And like so they just went straight up, and they had like just a perfect like picturesque structure. I'm like, oh my god, like I always fuck with the plant, it never gets like goes straight up and has all the branches coming off like perfect, right? Like all symmetric, and I'm like, this is fucking incredible. And they weren't like big bushes or anything. Most of them were pretty scrawny and like, but like some of them were fucking 12, 13 feet tall. And I'm like, and they're just out there blowing around like, and I was out there in a windstorm. Like, I mean, it was just windy as fuck one day. And I'm like looking at this field, like I was out there tying up my ganja plants, like the weed, and I'm like making sure everything's cool because those things were already budding and like big and heavy and shit breaking. So I'm out there fucking with them, and I'm like looking at the hemp field, and I'm like, uh, they're fucking on the ground in the wind, and then the wind stops, and they bloop, right back up, like, like fucking 8 foot plants just like on the ground. I'm like, holy shit! Like the wind was just blowing hard as fuck, but those things are so strong, dude. And then I didn't harvest all of it, and there was shit out there, all winter. And I would go out there every once in a while and like, there's some buds on stuff. It was like, it had bugs or whatever. The aphids were really bad that year. I got hit really fucking hard with everything. So that whole year was like a shit show. Learned a lot since then. And I'm not.
I was just thinking as you were speaking, I wonder, could you use like hemp as a banker or a companion? I guess it would be one or the other. Both, I guess. Could you use it for a
Well,
banker slash companion plant, a
I mean,
buffer
you could have
around
it.
your garden?
You could have it like around it. I wouldn't want it like. I mean, you could put it in the beds with it, but at that point you just have to treat it as its own, plant, because it's going to take all the same shit that your weed plant wants. So you don't want to, if you're not trying to grow some hemp. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it might have brought in the aphids. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because, bugs see, like, I don't know if aphids are like that too, but if there's a ton of one thing in one spot, they'll see it easier than if it's all interplanted. I mean, it was in a
I've seen
field though,
that
and they were like
in
8 feet apart and
gardens
like
in
6 foot rows.
particular, with just in particular strains in general or cultivars. Them I just tack one in particular one. You're like, wow, they don't like them turds.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, I've had plants that are like growing into each other in like beds, and it's like one plant will have bugs, and the plant that it's literally like all up in is like fine. And it's like, what the fuck is going on here? That seems like not right, but that's how it is sometimes. Not usually, but I've seen it. Same with powdery mildew. I've seen plants rubbing up on other plants, and they're just like fine.
So what'd you end up doing with that hemp? I remember you said you didn't necessarily have or find the market that you thought you may
Most of
have
it,
with it.
most of it's sitting in totes in the barn still. I don't know. I like make salve and stuff with a bunch of like weed, and I'll throw hemp in there. Like sometimes if I make stuff, I'll throw some hemp in just to get some CBD and some good shit in there. But I mean, it was good. There was like, it's got seeds and stuff in it, and it tastes pretty good though. And honestly, I was shocked by the terpene profiles throughout this whole field was just like all over the map. And there was a couple out there that had like no joke, like I grabbed this plant and it smelled my hand, and you would have thought I was literally cutting garlic. Like it smelled like fucking garlic. And I was like, what? And I had heard people talk about, like a garlic terp, and I'm like, I've never, I've had stuff that's kind of like savory or, like GMO, but it's like I've never had anything that's like garlic. And this shit was like, I was like, what? That can't be right. Like, and it went from that to like cheese, or like there was like berries terps out there. There was everything. So that was really interesting. Because it was all just from seeds, so lots of phenos. And then like half of it was purple, half of it was green. All sorts of weird shit. It was cool to just like put seeds in the ground and see them grow though. I mean, I potted them, but putting them in the ground and just watching them do their thing was like pretty crazy.
See, that's one thing that I think is the difference now that you say that. Why those plants were able to bend like that. That's fucking taproot vigor right there. That's that
For
root
sure.
going down as deep as it can get before it branches out, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there was just, it didn't have a choice. It wasn't getting watered or anything, so it had to. It had to get down there. Otherwise it was gonna die. And it did it. And, they did it. It was great. I definitely could have like, probably made it so there was way more of him and they were way bigger, but I really kind of just wanted to see it happen, just for my own education, really. And just to see that many
Right on.
plants in a field, it was really cool. Watching them all in the wind with that many, I'm like, I fucking did this. This is pretty cool. I'm just back there like,
Yeah.
okay, nobody's stopping me. They said I could do this. Because that year nobody came out and checked or anything. There was nothing. It was just like, here you go, $100. Plant as much as you want. Tell us where you're gonna plant them. Okay, $100. Fuck, that's not much to lose.
No, no, no. That's awesome too. Like I said, it would be an awesome experience. I've actually kind of heard like California kind of taking advantage of like the hemp market of there a little bit. Just like, oops, it's over. Oh, or you know what I mean, or you know,
Dude,
swaying it a little bit.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
but
over
like,
rats.
huh?
Kind of, you know, and I don't know, intentionally cannabis being over. Oh shit, I must have got some bad seed, or I don't know,
Yeah.
some shady
I mean,
practices.
people are doing crazy shit with the hemp now. Like you can, take a field of hemp and turn it into THC distillate, which is pretty wild. That doesn't seem right, but they're doing it. Crude CBD into THC. I'm like, what? But so then that's like all on the market, like, well, that's like fucking Franken THC. That ain't right. That's not how it's supposed to be. But yeah, that's a whole nother bag of worms. But something else I was gonna say, talking about watching plants like growing, I've always had like a couple of, like volunteers grow out there. And usually they get killed or whatever, but there was a couple out of this old compost pile that I don't really use anymore, but there's definitely like some compost there. It's next to the chicken coop. And I think they were hemp, but two plants were out there and I didn't see them for like a long while. And then I was like, oh, fuck. By the time I saw them, they were already like as tall as me. And one of them was a male and it was still early on. So I pulled that and just let the other one go. And dude, it was like at least 12 feet tall and pretty much all the way around. And it grew up and it just kept going. And I was just like, I'm over in my beds, like working my ass off, sweating. I'm looking at this plant over here and it's huge and it's healthy. And it's like, I didn't do anything to that. It's just over there doing its thing. Like, how do I make them all like that? Like, where I don't have to do anything, you know? And then like I watched it and there was that windstorm that same day. I came back there and I was like, man, that thing's gonna blow over. I could tie it up, but I didn't. And it just kind of like fell over and then it just like going and then it just like got big again. It was just like it just kind of kept going, and getting bigger. And, I didn't harvest it, but it smelled pretty good. It was definitely hemp. It was just cool to watch. It's like, what are we doing here? That thing was huge. There's big buds on it. Like, I didn't do anything. Huh.
That's awesome, man. I think that's another thing that people underestimate cannabis with is the hardiness of that plant, man. You can really manipulate the plant in a lot of ways, and she'll snap right back in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I remember right when I started growing, like learning about like tying them down and like splitting them right from the beginning, like mainlining or whatever, you know. And I was like doing all that shit. I was in there like, tie 'em down, come back in like an hour and a half and look at it. And I'm like, the leaves were facing the ground when I left, and now they're already all the way back up at the leg. Like, how the fuck does that happen? I was obsessed, and that was just like I only had like two plants, so I'm like in there fucking with everything, learning, watching. Now it's like, okay, here we go. I'm gonna go pull some family. See you in a week. Yeah, it's fun though.
It's always I like to see that too. The ones from underneath that actually kind of twist, completely turn around, face up, do what they got to do. You're like, man,
Dude, it's crazy.
you're a
Yeah.
go getter, aren't you?
Yeah, and the one year, this is when I learned like outdoor what the plants will do out there. When I was telling you, I like popped a bunch of random seed and had a bunch of males, so I was pulling plants out, and then like the plants that were next to those plants pretty much all filled in the spaces that where I didn't plant another plant. Like they just with not that much time left either, they just fill in the space. Like it's pretty much like as much room as you give them out there, they're gonna fill it up. And that's like so far I put ten plants in that bed last year and I figured like, okay, these will be spaced out. They were 8 feet apart, 6 feet apart or something. I could have put fucking 5 plants in that bed, and I think they would have been still touching, Like those big plants were fucking cross, it was a mess. Like trying to harvest it, it's just like Jesus. Yeah, a lot of families.
Looks like a good problem to have. So I guess do you believe in the whole defoliation process? I guess that's a fun one to talk about with organic folks. Some are like, no, 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 no. Some are like, yeah, I don't give a shit.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of ways to look at it, but to me, it's usually just I'm defoliating for airflow mostly, just to keep shit from getting too wet in the middle. Because like, I mean, if I'm indoor, I'll defoliate too, just to keep everything from, you know, getting too tight. And it's like as soon as you defoliate, they fill right back up, you know, very quickly. So it's just like when I'm outside, it's like you can't. You get down to the end of one row, you start the other way, and it's like by the time you're done, the leaves are already back. It's just like, okay, can pretty much just do this forever. But and it's like I look at it as like most of them got to come off at the end of the season anyway, right? Like at least for the bud I'm harvesting, and yeah, pretty much everything. So it's like if I had time, I would, at the end of the season for sure defoliate the fuck out of them, and for rot just to help with that. But also, there's an argument to be said for each spot where you pull a leaf off or clip it is like a entry point for rot or any kind of pathogen. It's just like a wound basically. So that's something to think about. But I feel like the airflow is more important than that. So like yeah, at the end of the season, if shit's like as it's like ripening on the stalk, like I would pull all the fan leaves, like just do it while they're out there instead of have to do it, when you hang them. Because if they're pretty much done anyway, unless you have some reason you want to leave the fan leaf, like if you're somewhere where it's super super dry, like I would probably leave some fan leaves on when I hang them, just to have a little more moisture buffer. Because like if you let that shit dry out too quick, I'm sure you've done it. It don't taste right.
Oh man, you just opened.
I know the whole thing.
Yeah, you have kind of. Because I've been growing for a long time, and I used to think that the length of it was better. Longer the better. Everybody else. I've tried drying several different ways, throughout my grow history. I've used the fucking racks. I've wet trimmed, I've dry trimmed. I've just hung the plant like you've talked about. I've trimmed, wet trimmed and put everything on coat hangers with pins, clothespins, and nice little neat racks with all that good shit. Yeah. And I've been back and forth on which way is more right, da 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 da. And I think it comes back to more intention these days because I do use a herb dryer. I got fucking cannabis in a dryer right now. It looks like like a dehydration machine. Yeah, it's like
really?
it
It's
looks
just a
like
dehydrator.
it kind of looks like one, but it's not.
Probably not as hot, right?
Yeah, not even as close. It's slow going. You can hear the fan coming on and off. It isn't a
Do you just put it
constant.
in there
Yeah,
wet?
yeah. This shit that I'm
I've never
smoking
heard of
that I
this
showed
thing.
you right here
This is news
is
to
fucking.
me.
I harvested this shit like 4 days ago, and I'm already smoking it. Shit, you not.
I've heard of
Perfectly
people
good
freeze
taste.
drying it,
Yeah, I've heard of that too.
but I've
So
also heard it doesn't. It's not a cure.
well with the freeze dryer it looks good, but it doesn't necessarily hold the structure
It's
for long. After
it's
a
dry.
while, it's just like poof. Yeah,
It's dry.
yeah.
So
So
how does
I've
that?
almost wondered. I like it. I like it. It takes nothing away from it. Okay, so I guess like I'm getting to as I'm stuttering like hell, it comes back to intent, I think, to be honest with you. And again, this is gonna get real hippie-ish at some point and very organic and towards the end. Okay. But it's all an intent here. So I think if you want more of that like bouquet type cannabis like we're talking about, where you're trying to pick out every little node, every terp profile in there, I think that quick preservation method, drying it as fast as you can in one of these, there's several types of herb drivers these days. I mean, they go from the cheap model that I've got, and I scoffed. I wanted this thing not to work. I done side by
That's
sides
where
on
I'm
this
at
thing.
with it. I'm
Seriously.
like, this is just another fucking thing you can buy.
No, I'm
I'm
serious. I
listening
done
though.
side by sides. I've been running it for fucking 2 years now, to be
Okay.
honest with you. I took down my dry tan. And I'm not going to say the name. I'm not affiliated with it. You know what I mean? It's a good machine. But I honestly think it comes down to that quick preservation method. You know, you're not losing nothing there, and it's tasting more fresh, more individual terp profiles come out to where I think if you're looking more for kind of a cured cannabis, you know what I mean, to where it's a more blended flavor, or you're just looking for a flavor, I think that's where the long-term dry comes into play. And this is where it gets really hippie on you. You know, it comes back to the stress factors that we were talking about earlier. You know, any plant, even grass, once it's chopped, you know what I mean? It instantly shink sends off a terpene profile that we smell is warning to the rest of the grass. Hey man, you're gonna get mowed real soon. And I think that kind of happens with the cannabis plant in general. So I think from the day you walk up and chop that plant, it's already sending out a stressor through the plant. Okay. It's already going through changes. It's already doing different things chemically. Okay. Now this is where it gets again more hippie-ish. As that thing dies off, the more leaf or plant matter that's on there is what? It's water and nutrients for that longer dry out. That plant's still going through changes till the last minute, every bit of moisture is out of there. So I think as that drying process goes, a lot of people used to say it was more like the leaves coming around and surrounding the buds and the terpenes being locked in. I don't think that's it. I think it's more of those final stages of like, warning the others or whatever. It's still kind of stressing and changing as it's drying out till that last minute. So I think that's the difference there between the quick preservation is more like we were talking about earlier, a little bit more stickier, more individual terp profile, to where the longer dry is something more complex, more unified than you'll get from let's say A to B method. Uh, so that's
Yeah.
kind of my mentality on it now. But these dryers again, man, I've seen them from like the one I use. You could probably buy, I think it's like $130 for a small model now that you can do like roughly a pound in. To like these bigger dry machines where you can set the humidity. They're Curador type models where you can damn near just dial it right down and let it do what it wants. And it is
Yeah.
what it is. Again, back to
I don't
intent,
buy it.
I guess.
I don't like it.
And I'm not asking you to,
I
but
know.
I'm telling you right now, I have judged a few cannabis high times cups, and I've
I
smoked a
believe you.
lot of this fresh cannabis through one that's been dried in one of these dryers. And I've been on the show like a few times going, talking to somebody just like this and be like, yeah, I'll see you at this event Friday and we're going to be smoking this cannabis. And then people go, oh, this is good. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with this at all. It's still super terpy. But again, to each their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the drying stage is just so important. I mean, like, I don't know, I feel like an oven like that would be super hard to use at a big outdoor scale anyway, which I guess I'm like as small as it gets for outdoor scale, but you know, it just gets bigger. But I don't know, like just trying to load stuff into an oven, it's like a whole nother step in the process that I don't know. I guess it's just the way I look at the whole process. There's different
I
ways,
actually
and
started
again,
drying
it
my
just
hash in it.
depends on your situation more than anything, I guess.
One
What'd you say?
again, wanted to hate it. I said I actually
Right.
dry my hash in it. Again, didn't think I would fucking want to do it or it wouldn't work that well. I did a 12-hour run back hell about a year or so now on the show. Me and Boom Farms, another Canadian grower, D420K, Smokey the Bear 2.0. Them two kind of talked while me and Boom washed. He did a wet wash. I did a dry material wash. We washed for 12 hours on air. And then I did a side by side where I would normally few different techniques where how I would normally dry a hash. One would be the freezer method. One would be taking it and breaking it up into small pieces of parchment paper. Thirdly, being in the dryer. And I kind of went right for the dryer. I kind of at one point halfway through it went, yeah, fuck this, the dryer works. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And it was kind of nicer. The dryer allowed me to kind of keep it more in the puck type, you know what I mean? Where I wasn't mashing up all the heads, trying to break it all up, which I think is just brutal to the medicine in general. That terps are volatile. Every time we expose them, break them up, expose them to air, we're losing. We're always losing in the extract thing.
Yep.
So if we can kind of keep it more together, you know what I mean? So be it. That's where like the freeze dried hash kind of comes into play nice. I think the quicker drying method. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I just feel like with like drying bud, there's like the chlorophyll's breaking down, like there's shit happening that takes a little bit of time, I think. I don't know though. I'm not a scientist.
I'm not either.
I've
I'm
just
not
found
either.
that usually it's like for me, if I can keep the temperature and humidity where I want it, like 7 to, I try and get to 10 days minimum if I can. Just hanging, in the room at like 60% humidity, it's like 60 degrees. And it just I feel like if you can get it then it's perfect. And that's just, defanned if I can get to it. Like I used to just cut the whole plant. Like cut the whole plant and hang the whole plant, but that doesn't really work anymore. Number one, you can't cut I gotta get a chainsaw to cut the plant. So I could barely carry this fucking thing. You can't cut those whole plant. And like those giant ones, I couldn't get them out of the trellis. Like I just had to, cut the tops off. So now I just like that worked pretty good though. I basically just got like, you know, 2, 3, 4 foot sections or whatever of like big colas and hung them on lines. I got lines all over the place.
I love chat, man. There's twice now that chat's like I've looked up. Well, once I asked you about the mushrooms, cultivating the mushrooms and cannabis, which obviously I talk to a lot of growers, and there's a lot of times that I do know things, but I like, I try to coach it out. And they're in chat going, Gus Gross does that too, and I'm like, I know. And then we were talking about the urge dryer, and I'm sitting here going, yeah, I'm not going to name it. You know what I mean? I don't want to, I'm not trying to sell it to you. Chat's in here going, they're putting the name in chat going, the dude's got white papers and everything. And he does, he's got tests and white papers and all that shit.
Believe it.
They've got the link to it in chat and shit. That's kind of funny. Cheers to chat. Again, I think we get it set in our ways or some of the stuff that we're taught.
Sure.
I think we're afraid to, not necessarily afraid, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it type mentality.
And like for that specific thing, like I fucked that up a lot of times, like drying shit and it not coming out to what it could have been, It's like before harvest is when the bud I feel like is always just like the best. It's perfect. Everything's going to be great. And then it's like sometimes by the time you get it into the jar, it's like, what happened? Like, that's not what it looked like when it was, still alive. Like, this smells like hay. Doesn't taste good. Yep. Probably like my
Shit,
first
that just
3 or
happens
4
in
harvests.
general.
Yeah.
I shit you not. I shit you not. One of the first harvests I had, the first real good harvest I had, fucking just thinking I was balling. Nice big fucking colas and shit. Fucking few days into it, fucking being on the rack. Come in and they fucking shrunk up a little bit. I'm like, who's been out there and shit? It looked like, what I mean? That ain't what was out there and shit. It was. He didn't realize that shit was gonna shrink as bad or whatever. So yeah, there's times where it definitely changes right off the bat, man.
Yeah, and I mean you can totally ruin it after you cut it down. Like that's to me one of the most crucial times. Like obviously you have to get it to that point first, but it's like you can totally fuck some shit up by drying it too fast or just fucking it up. Not getting it dry enough quick enough. The fine line for sure. And it's just like I'm trying to think of like how I would incorporate one of these oven things. Like it would just have to be like it'd be a whole nother thing, I have to like load it in and do like batches nonstop.
Well, for me, okay, and again, we're talking two different styles. You know what I mean? There is a few companies I know that are working on a more larger scale type machine. But for an outdoor grow to sit there and wet trim and right trim and fill tray after tray, woo, I could see how that'd be a bitch, man. As you're already talking about that big, nature was nice to you. You got a nice bumper crop already behind the ball. Freezer came in handy. You know what I mean? Ain't no way you'd be fucking trying to pack that machine. Fucking, you would at that point wish you had that 20, 25 people and they would all be at work. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude,
I don't know if I could.
dry trim everything by myself pretty much. I'll get as much help as I can get anybody to stay, but it's it's usually not much. But I mean, I feel like dry trimming is definitely the way I like to do it. I'll say that. That's the way I've had the most success. But I mean, I'm assuming you wet trimmed for the oven thing.
Yeah. And again, it's a hash thing too, because I like that wet material for my hash as well. And I think, there's again, it comes right back into play. What are you trimming for? What are your intent? You want that hash or, I don't know. So the two seem to work well for me. You know what I mean? Wanting that wet material saved for my hash, the wet trim for my hash, and the dryer. Perpetual, working in the perpetual type garden like I am, to where I'm pulling down a tent a month instead of that one large harvest. Like I said, that was a blessing. You know what I mean? Instead of having a 4x4 fucking drying tent, you know what I mean? Now I could be fucking had a nice
Yeah,
little table with a couple dryers sitting there, fucking taking that down. You know what I mean?
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's like pretty
Teacher.
much that's how everything is. Like people always say, like, well, what's the best way to do this? It's like, well, literally, there's like all these ways you can do it, and none of it like they don't have to be bad. Like it's just there's different ways. It depends on what you have, like what your situation is, what you're trying to get, like how you want to do it, like what matters to you, and just like that's just like your parameters, and then you go from there. So like you're doing your perpetual thing, I'm doing my outdoor thing. It's like two completely different, you know, things. And we're both just getting weed. Like that's what we're trying to do. We're doing the same thing, right?
Again, and well, I talk a lot about this and trying to defend a little bit of the bro science, or more what I like to kind of, I've taken the term from the mycology world, is the citizen science is what I prefer to call it. Take the bro science out of citizen science there. I think some of this stuff, a lot of stuff what we do behind the scenes, practices like this that we're talking, we get used to our what works for us and our environment, little tips and tricks that we picked up on the way in our grows and our
Totally.
environment. We think, man, that works well, but we don't think, ah, I need to write that down and start fucking doing tests on this. You know what I mean? I think at
Yeah.
some point we go, wow, that's a great idea. Hopefully, I even think at some point, we do shit to the plant and we find out it works, and we think, man, I can't be the first guy that thought of this. You know what I mean? And we just kind of keep
Definitely.
doing it because it fucking works.
Well, and then you see somebody else doing it, and you're like, okay, this guy knows. He had the same thought as me. Okay, like I'm not alone. Yeah,
Yeah.
let you know you're doing something right.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm not good with tests. I just pretty much people is like, "We'll just try it on a couple of plants." I'm like, if I think it's gonna work, I'm putting it on everything. Like I can't help myself usually. And at this point, it's like I just try and do less and less every time now. Just get that soil out there in those beds like money, and yeah, stop doing so much. I feel like it's getting better every year. The beds are growing.
Look, looking at your Instagram page, you're doing something right there, my friend. You're definitely doing something right.
Lots of compost. It works good. It's like, man, everyone's been saying that since the beginning of time. Turns out it works. Yeah.
Right on. So do you, it's not something you need necessarily hear of, like the horse manure per se. I've always, used it in the vegetable garden, but I've never necessarily incorporated it into a cannabis garden.
Yeah. So that just happened because I found this guy that had horse manure for free that he would load into my dump truck with his loader. And I was like, all right. I was looking for any kind of manure would have been fine. I mean, that's a good one though. And pretty much if you're gonna let it sit in a pile for a year, it doesn't, it's not gonna be hot. But I've planted stuff. Usually if I like have some extra plants or like some males or something that I know are males, and it's like springtime or whatever, and I got a pile or I got some compost I want to test out, I'll just throw some plants straight in it with like no mix just to see. And I've, every single time it's been like, oh yeah, they look great, no problem, okay. And now I just like basically look for if there's like a bunch of worms in there, I think you're good to go. I don't know. It might not be perfect, but I feel like if the worms like it, then the plants like it.
Again, man, that's why I asked if you fed, how you were kind of working it with either with the bokashi, the earthworms. I've heard,
They just came. I didn't
arguments
even
both
add any.
sides there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds like you're ahead of the game, just letting it sit. They're already there taking care of it for you.
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of happened, out of my sheer laziness. I'm like, hey, wait, this is good. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. And then I make some like teas and stuff throughout the year. But I don't know. I basically just do that because I have stuff to do it with. I have a bunch of comfrey growing, so I always make comfrey tea. And then like if I have males or if I do like the first big like just like trim up defoliation, whatever you want to call it, when I'm like cutting lowers and thinning them out a little bit, I'll make a tea out of all that stuff. Throw all those branches in some water. Just let them fucking sit basically. Or brew them. I got a bubbler out there too, so I don't know. I try all sorts of weird shit.
Nothing wrong with that. Again, it kind of just keeps us on our toes and keeps the fun and growing alive, trying new things a little bit here and there.
Yeah, and I mean like just making teas out of like the plant that's growing there makes a ton of sense, because it's got all the nutrients right, like in the right formulations already. Just unlock them in the water, and I don't know. That's how my brain thinks of it anyway. And then like I'll go out and like if there's like flowers and stuff in the field next to me or whatever's basically blooming at the time, I'll go out and like grab a bunch of that shit and throw it in with the tea. Because that's like kind of goes along with all the KNF stuff. It's like whatever's in bloom, then that those plants have the nutrients that whatever you're trying to grow right now should be looking for the same thing. If it's like springtime, it's like early veg stuff. You get veg nutrients. If it's a flower, it's flowering nutrients. Okay, I don't know. That's very crude, but like kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, that's one of those things that, again, I'm afraid of how deep I want to get into the organics because I'm like, I kind of can be just like you in a lot of ways. Not necessarily with, I won't put that shit on everything, which I can be that way as well. But I tend to like when I get into stuff, I kind of tend to go balls into it, just fucking
Yeah.
all in. And I'm afraid I may risk my likability with the other people in the house if I go completely organic to where I'm got the earthworm thing going, I'm bokashi, and I'm worried about this. They're gonna be like, yeah, I ain't doing it. I can see this already. I ain't doing none of that shit.
Nah, you'll be fine. They won't even know it's down there. It'll be good.
No, I can see. No, I could be that bad to just be like walk by the garbage and be like, yeah, I see like eggshells and coffee grounds and shit in there. You guys know there's a bucket for that.
Oh, dude, I do. I put all my organic stuff in a bucket and just do something. Usually, I just give it to the chickens, but I don't know. I used to throw it in the compost pile, like I had a food compost pile, like a kitchen scrap kind of thing. But you know, that's like little tiny bucketfuls at a time. I need like tractor bucketfuls at a time. I need a lot of compost. So that's when I started like sourcing the bulk organic material. I was like, I just like need more compost. That's all there is to it. And I was making little piles and like stacking them by hand, like layering like straw, mushroom blocks. And this was before I had the horse shit hookup. But those mushroom blocks, dude, if you break them up and mix them in with like wood chips or leaves, like it will eat those wood chips in like a couple months. It's crazy. Probably even quicker than that. Like that shit will cook fast. If you like layer it up and let it sit and flip it a couple of times. That's how I did it the first few times before I did the real big pile. And then yeah, once I got the dump truck, things kind of escalated.
I had that similar experience with the bokashi. again, kind of like, my experience in the soil back in the day, I've been through every medium, most drove type systems, like most people have, just working your way through there.
Yeah.
First, first types with soil there were fucking just like you were talking about, store bought, fucking throwing it out, then through the super soil, and now trying to actually keep it, work it, you know. It's definitely a learning curve for sure there. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
What?
hoping to stay more towards the soil side, but I guess what I'm getting to is, like when I started open the door when Mr. Smiley's Gardens there, you know, kind of directly placed the challenge in front of me. Here's your earth boxes. Run this shit against your cocoa. Okay. Uh, I was real impressed with that first run, but I had also gotten like extras, Brandon Russ sent over some shit for me to use as well, his bokashi and his microbes and shit. And that's what was my first encounter with the bokashi. You know what I mean? That's why, and it made me kind of look into actually what you can do with it. That's why I kind of was asking about the compost, because I've heard that you can sprinkle that on your compost in those layers, and it helps knock down the smell and helps break it down a little quicker as well.
Yeah, for
But
like
I
type stuff for sure.
I sprinkled some of that shit on my cocoa, and I was using a grow it cocoa, which is, I mean, this shit's like 3/4 inch chunks, basically wood chips, super airy. I sprinkled some of that bokashi on that fucking shit, and by the end of that run, I would have normally gotten a few good runs out of that cocoa, rinsing it in between. And most of the times when it got to where you'd buy it like in a fine form, like you'd buy it at the store, that's when I was chucking it out because I liked it so chunky, so airy. But man, that it was brand new cocoa that run. I sprinkled some of that bokashi on it, and by the time the end of that run, that shit was just fine, almost fucking dirt. There was no chunkiness left down to it at all, man. That bokashi had broke that shit right down in that run. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, the microbes are very real. And like that was one of the first things I brought into like when I was doing, like I think I was running Canna at the end before I switched over completely. And I started using Recharge. I was listening to that dude's podcast, the Dude Grow Show. That was like the first weed podcast I ever heard of. And it makes Recharge. It's just like another microbe, it's a microbe product with like kelp and some other good shit in it. And it works. Like I put it on shit and it's like 48 hours guaranteed, whatever on the thing. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, okay. Like, fuck yeah, the plants will love that shit. And they're like, everything's green, blowing up. I'm like, okay. Microbes definitely do something. And I was adding that in with, I was running salts still. So, like, it still helped. Obviously, it's not like propagating itself in the soil there in that situation. But even as long as it was able to like survive in that environment, it definitely helped. And yeah.
It's a deep door right there for me, and I'm still kind of stuck in that wormhole right there with the mycology of fungus and shit. Holy cow, man. The power that shit has to break shit down, fucking rocks and shit, the way a hyphy can reach into a stone and fucking just like start busting it up, breaking it down. It's fucking fascinating. And then to find out that, everything that's going on in that soil is pretty much fucking going on right in your gut. The direct correlation of that shit fucking blew my mind. It really, yeah,
For
it
sure.
changed everything for me, man. And I've been kind of stuck in that, man, for a long time, because it's very true, man. That gut biome is so very important. I think people underestimate that shit so much, man. I started like drinking the kombucha and shit after that. I'm a big advocate for that shit, man. I'd be talking to people in the grocery store and shit. Oh, you sick? Practically hand a bottle back. Yeah, there you go. That's what you need right there. Couple of you be good. Clean out
Yep.
that little apple cider vinegar, kill out that bad shit in your gut, the bad stuff. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
It's like we
Kill the
watched the same
bad, get
videos
some
or
good.
something. Oh,
Yeah, fucking The Dirt Cure was one of my favorite books about the mycology in your gut and in the soil there. And in the beginning of that book, she talks about she fucking right out the bat, she don't even ask you how you feeling or whatever. She wants to talk about your shit. And the end process right back traces it right back through their system, how the gut, the microbes are breaking this down, the good and bad, and how your body's interacting with all that shit. It's a really eye-opening book. It really is.
yeah, that's like the whole thing. Microbes are, it's everything. And the gut alone is, yeah. Yeah, I'm like, I know about all this stuff and I'm like pretty bad at practicing most of it. It's like I'm pretty unhealthy most of the time still, but like, I do stuff. And,
Well, I
it's
don't
like,
think
and
you're
I'm
bad
conscious
at
and I'm
practicing
conscious
that.
of it all the time.
Nah, I don't think you're bad at practicing it at all. I think you just figured it out. Basically, you're just like, yeah, I know what's going on. Why fucking try to fuck around, beat myself up in the inside with that? I'm just gonna take it right outdoors where it's going on anyway. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
that's fair.
you've cut a corner is all you've done.
All about it. Make this easier and cheaper. That's kind of how I look at everything. And now I'm down this whole organic rabbit hole. Like, yeah, this isn't easier, but I'm in. I think it probably is easier in the end, but yeah, it's like a whole thing.
It's one of those things, though, man. I've said this a lot too, man. Once you dip into that organics, man, you might have started down that hole for the cannabis or whatever, man. But you definitely start learning a lot about yourself and other, the way you step in this on this planet. Once you've opened that door up, for sure,
Oh,
man,
for sure.
it cultivates you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about that. Ooh.
So how we doing, man? I just wanted to check in because I know beforehand you did mention we were a little late on the times you weren't up used to being up this late. I just wanted to check in with you, make
I mean,
sure that we weren't
yeah, I'm good.
overstaying our welcome so far.
Doing all right.
All right, cool. Cool. So what are some of your favorite events here in Michigan? And we're coming up on that season. And you mentioned one in the beginning, but is there some that in particular that you're fond of?
Honestly, I like pretty much just started going to like all these vending events, and the last one was the first one I ever vended at with the hash, so that was cool. And that was the cream swap meet. Um, like the first thing I really ever went to was the regenerative conference, like 2 or 3 years ago or whatever it was at Grow Green, and then I went to it again this year. That's pretty much like the best thing. It's kind of a little bit pricey, but you get to hang out with everybody and meet all the cool people, and everybody's there, and it's really good information. Like the first year I went to that, I was like writing everything down. Like I wanted to have all the information written down. Like I was learning so much. And this year I went to it and I was like, okay, this is awesome because I learned a lot that time, and I've been learning stuff the whole time since then. And now I'm like, I know like not everything they're talking about, but I know like a lot, like 70% probably. I know the basis of everything, so I could just listen and like take in the new stuff and like add it to the base knowledge already. So that was really nice, and just to get to hang out with everybody is always fun. Um, yeah, the Gems and Genetics is this weekend. That's a new one. That should be pretty sweet. Like you said, the camping ones are where it's at. I love that shit. um, oh, the Compost Cup. Have you heard of that one?
Not until Herb Conscious Farms came on, he had spoke of it, but until then, I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, that's where I met him actually. Yeah, that's gonna be some cool shit. Because the last year was the first year, and I was actually like on the Q&A panel for composting, which that was pretty cool. That was like the first thing I ever did of anything. And they did like all these demonstrations, like going through all the IMO stuff and you know inoculating and wood chips, and we went through the woods and did like a mushroom walk through the woods, and we did it at night, and they had like fucking these mushroom flashlights that are like they're like more than just UV flashlights, but like their UV ones will like there's certain mushrooms in the woods that like glow. They're like fluorescent or whatever it is. And they had one of these lights that had like this thing on it, and these mushrooms, and we're walking through the dark. There's like 25 people, and we're pretty much everybody had indulged in some mushrooms at this point, I think. And we're just like this big group of people going through the woods with like these glowing mushroom lights, and they're looking for mushrooms that are glowing. And I was tripping balls pretty much. It was a real good time. And I was learning stuff still, like at that point I was still learning stuff. Like, this is awesome. But yeah, just a lot of good, all the compost talk, all the soil stuff, all the regenerative type stuff. And that one's very reasonably priced, and it's a camping event also. Can't remember when it is, but it's like I don't know, like a month, like right before harvest, pretty much, like outdoor harvest time. Somewhere around then. So I remember last year I was like, man, if it was like 3 more weeks, I could like have some fresh bud here. But it wasn't ready. So that time, that's like how my scheduled brain works in summertime. It's just like everything goes based off of when the plants are, like the growing time. Yeah.
That's a grower's life right there, man. And well, in a small way, I'm kind of envious, man. You have that buffer as an outside grower, man. Like, as long as they're wet, whatever, harvest time isn't till fall. But then there's that crunch time that I'm not envious of. It's
Dude,
harvest time for you
it's
guys out there.
like
I'm
yeah.
not envious of that at all. So.
And now I've added, like I used to be like, I'd finish trimming and like get everything harvested, and then I'd have like winter and I would chill. But now I have my washroom in the garage outside, which is an uninsulated like garage. So I just wash when it's cold. So basically now all winter I'm gonna be still processing everything that I harvested, you know what I mean? Like get through the bud, flower and trim it, and then get to the freezers and start running through all that shit. So now winter is just wash and pressing. So now it's like pretty much, yeah, summer is like my slow time now. So right now it's like about to be crazy planting and getting everything out. Even this weekend I'm like, I got to get everything ready for this show, but I should be outside bucking around in the beds and getting plants out there. It's about time. I should have them out already. But it was 30 degrees last night, so
Shit, yeah, it was 32 up here, man. Yeah, a little cold for sure.
yeah. Yeah, last year I had the plants out pretty early it was a little warmer, but I had like one greenhouse just totally battened down, and I had just like a little propane heater going in there that I would turn on at night just to get them through. But it was getting to like 60s and 70s during the day, so, and it was like 40s at night, 30s, 40s, so like they were kicking it during the day. I would open the sides on the greenhouse during the day, but it was still like needed propane at night, so it's kind of like, yeah, should I fight it or should I just leave them inside until it's But I will say those are the biggest plants I ever grew, so getting them out there is definitely the way. If you're going full term, full season, but it's a lot of fan leaves.
I can only bet. So, do you actually do anything with besides compost the leaves? Do you do anything with the fans? Juicing?
Uh,
You
no.
juicer?
I actually want to get a juicer, and I would definitely put leaves in there because I could make gallons of that stuff, freshly juiced.
I
I'm
haven't
basically
crossed that.
when the fan leaves, when it gets to the time when I gotta start pulling them, it's like I'll like close my eyes and all I see is fan leaves for like that's just how it is now. Like, oh God, get me out of here. But again,
That's
I'm
funny.
outside pulling fan leaves off of giant weed plants. I can't really complain.
True that. True that. Yeah, so I could see probably not wanting to do a whole lot with them. Just
No,
get them out of
no,
here.
I just throw them on the ground, like on the bed. I leave them right there, unless there's like some real bad bugs or something. But I think I finally started figuring that shit out after 2 years ago, and I got fucked by the aphids. Aphids came in, the ants were there, the ants were fucking guarding the aphids. It's like a whole thing. It was bad. I lost a lot of shit that year.
Oh yeah, you know you got it bad when you see them two together. The
Oh yeah.
fucking ants like the sugars that the fucking aphids leave behind, so they're buddies. You know,
Yeah, they'll like
we
protect the aphids from other shit. They'll like kill other shit that's trying to eat the aphids because they're like, no, this is our food source. They're our slaves. Fuck ants.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. At some point, man, I really do hope to get outdoors and do something on that scale. At that point, man, at least for me, I hope I'm into the part of the journey where I'm outdoor cultivating for more of the rehab reason that I've seen the power of cultivation, not necessarily on multiple levels. I honestly think the cultivation side has every bit of the healing power or medicinal weight as the consumption of cannabis does, to be honest with you. You know, when
Completely
you're
agree.
out there pulling those leaves, I bet you ain't thinking about the stress of the world or anything else,
No,
man.
I'm
You're
listening to the
thinking
fucking
at the
birds
task
chirping. You're
at
just like,
hand.
yeah, this is
And
nice.
yeah,
Like this is
yeah,
my
and
office.
that's a very healing right there, man. You know what I mean? If you can walk through and walk into a garden and lose your anxiety, your stress, you're on the healing path already.
Yeah,
You know
it's
what
a
I'm
fine
saying?
line because it also brings its own stress, like a lot. But it is
All right.
that's the
I'll
power
give
of
you
leaves.
that.
But like you're
I'll
saying,
give
it's
you
totally
that.
true. Like when I'm just out there working, like I'll forget about obviously there's like way more shit than I can ever do all the time. So it's just like I just have to accept that. And then when I'm just out there doing it and not thinking about anything, just like listening to the birds, pulling leaves, smelling the fresh air, like this seems right. That's where I'm supposed to be. This is good for me. And I might be able to
Like,
keep making a living doing it. So it's just like win-win.
Well, and in my mind, what I'd like to really see, I've never been real few, or I guess the path hasn't been the money. You know what I mean? The dollar, the industry aspect of it really hasn't necessarily been the draw. It's
Well,
always
that's
been
good.
necessarily, even from the day, like as you've kind of talked about earlier, it was to try to keep us in stock. You know what I mean? You bought that out so you could flip it so I can have mine, basically.
Like I cared more
It,
about that than stacking up a pile of cash. I was like, I like smoking weed. That's great.
and I think I'd be happy later in life with that on a larger scale, just kind of fucking teaching people the healing power through the cultivation side. And even if it came down to calling in that group at the end of harvest that like you were talking about, and going, what you harvest is yours. And as long as I've got some to tide me through the next year, we're cool. You know what I mean? You guys have learned something in the end. I sustained, you're gonna sustain, teach
Hell yeah.
somebody else. You know what I mean? I'd be cool with that. I would be absolutely 100% cool with that.
Hell
You
yeah.
know, and I think that it applies in so many ways. Now, they knew in the 70s. This is the part that pisses me off about this when I learned this fact. In the 70s, they knew that horticulture had that healing aspect to it. They knew that they could treat people with anxiety, returning vets with what they didn't term then, PTSD, but the stresses that they were having from there. Not only that, the healing power of you could use it as well from people recovering from harder drugs. You know what I mean? Learning how to sustain and keep, themselves with cannabis as well as healing. You know what I mean? Use RSO full spectrum to wean off other drugs and then teach themselves, heal themselves as they learn how to cultivate the plant. All of which I think would apply from, again, anxiety to people coming out back from war or prison. I think would be a cool setup to have like a nonprofit farm like that would be
That would be
super
dope. And
cool.
I think you could get a bunch of people to like pitch in here and there and help out with it, like just different growers that have knowledge and can help.
Uh, yeah, actually, and again, that's my stance on it is I'm very much medical these days. The healing power of the plant, both medical and through the cultivation side of it, is still the drum I'm beating. So to
For
each their
sure.
own. I have no qualms with it. The people that use it as recreational partying, again, people that drink alcohol, whatever. To each their own. But again, as far as cannabis goes, that's very near and dear to my heart because I've
Oh,
lost so many through bullshit drugs. To be honest with you.
sure. Yeah, I mean it's the one to stick with, that's for sure. Like yeah. And it's like I just am happy to be able to grow it and like work with it every day. Like I'm just happy to be able to make it what I do. And sometimes I have to like, look at the bottom line as much as I don't ever want to. But it's like if I'm going to keep doing it every day and not do anything else, then you still got to make it work and still be, okay with everything. But sometimes you just have to do shit and like, all right, we'll see what happens here. Good, it's good. If it, you know, you make the money and you're not happy with yourself, then don't do it. But I've never had that problem. Like I'm as honest as I can be about everything. It's straight up. But you gotta make you gotta make a living somehow. I'm about
Right,
it.
man.
I'm just like every day. I'm like I can't believe I can still do this. This is fucking awesome. I don't want to be doing anything else. That's for sure. I just kind of came up. I just kind of came up here and started doing it, and like kind of figured, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll get a job or whatever. But like, okay, Still here. It's still working. It's getting better every year. Okay, okay. You know, I mean, definitely going to be growing it one way or another forever. You know, if nothing else, just for myself.
Call me shallow, but there is like two things I see that I've seen achieved in my lifetime. And I was like almost at that point, like, that's it. I'm fucking happy. You know what I mean? And that was like cannabis being, legal or being able to grow quasi and fireworks in Michigan. I was like, I can blow shit up and smoke weed at the same time. Fucking, I'm here.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Uh,
Sometimes you just got to step back and be like, no, this is pretty good. Like, you know, you can always want more, but you don't always need more.
Simple Man, the Simple Man song. Simple Man, simple life, man. That's all I ask for right there.
And the weed definitely helps keep everything in perspective. You know, definitely something
Uh,
about being around weed plants too. I kind of forget about that sometimes, but like that's definitely a thing. You know, because like especially when you bring somebody that's never been around a weed plant and they're like all of a sudden surrounded by weed plants, they're just like you can see like it's like affecting them. Like whoa, you're like feeling some shit sometimes. Like, okay, especially if they're stoned. I mean, maybe not if they don't smoke weed, but that definitely happened to me. I remember the first few
it
times
sounds
I was.
like you just get waking up into kind of the culture itself. To be honest with you, I mean, it sounds like you've been to a couple of events, but wait till you kind of get into it, more vending and stuff like that. Uh, the more people you meet firsthand, man, you really Michigan has a huge, rich canning community, and
Dude, I've
it's
met so
sick,
many
man.
people just in the last year for real. It's wild. Yeah, good.
I get forward to looking for the events, man. They're each one's almost like a fucking family reunion or like a family event. Shit.
Yeah, like oh dude, all the regenerative people, like I'm already like I literally I'm like, well, I probably shouldn't go to this one, but I want to go see all these people because we're all doing shit all the time anyway. But like you get to see people at the events because we all, make time. And it's like I already feel like that just from the few things I did last year, and like it's it's great. I'm looking forward. It's just getting bigger. Yeah, it's
Well,
good.
man, that one thing I thought was super cool about Michigan and the events in general was we were able to fucking limp our way through that pandemic. A lot of places didn't have the opportunities that we had throughout the last few years in Michigan, and we kept our events. They weaned down a little bit, but they were still going. And
The Regen conference got taken out 2 years.
but I think we're about right on the full circle of that, to where this year and probably next year we're gonna see that explosion again of fucking just events
Yeah,
everywhere, fun kind of related stuff to do like every weekend, and that shit's I don't know, good culture, good fun.
yeah, yeah. I'm already like booked for more shit than I ever would like to be for the whole summer. Like usually I'm just like I don't like to leave the farm at all, if at all possible. But now that I'm like starting to do the vending, it's like okay, this is definitely worth it, and it's great to see everybody and just learn new stuff every time. Whether you're vending or just at the event. Every time I learn shit, meet new people. So
So I guess this would be a perfect time to ask, since you are kind of suggesting that you will be vendoring at this weekend's event, what will you have available there? Huh?
Mm, like it. So there will be plenty of rosin. Lots of the Boss Scotty, Grease Monkey. See. I don't know. There's a few other ones. You're gonna have to come smell them for yourself. Um, there'll be Grease Monkey flour, and there's Grease Monkey rosin. That's probably my favorite bud that I have. I'll just bring a bunch of that, and then I'll have some various gummies with different types of ingredients, rosin, and mushrooms. Some of them have both, and chocolate bars with all that stuff. So yeah, if you're trying to have a groovy night, you can definitely stop by my table and get all the stuff you need. And
Hell yes.
I'm thinking about doing a couple of like basically like a party box, like a party pack, where it has like all like a gram or 2 grams of each of the rosins, and then like some bud, and then like some joints. I think I'm gonna do some like donut joints too. They're calling them. I've always known them as like a snake in the grass. Put a big snake of rosin in a joint. Yeah,
That's the best.
I think I'm gonna do like an eighth of weed in the joint and like a gram of rosin, and they'll be pretty stout. But I'm gonna do the party boxes, and then I have one sec.
Yeah, I absolutely love the weed and hash, that's for sure.
I got
That's a
these
cool ass
hats.
hat, man.
Yeah, so there's like 5 of these, so they're gonna be in each of the party packs. So like, if you want one of these hats, you got to get the party pack. I'm gonna make more, but I just did like a test run and they came out pretty sweet. I got this one too. This one's like stitched in. I like this one, but yeah, just kind of like I like fucking with trying new shit. I'll probably get a bunch of hats made here soon. Let's see.
Right on, man. I dig it. As
I
somebody
mean,
that's kind of fucked around with merch like that, man, that stitch shit is so much more expensive than
well, dude,
it's a
these things were like on a smoking deal. That yeah, I was like, okay, that's pretty cheap. So I got a bunch of those, and I was like, ooh, they got a stitched one, pretty decent price. So I got one for me, and I'm like, we'll see how it looks, you know, because I've ordered stuff and it's like, oh, this is like shitty, this is not what I was expecting, like the material or whatever. So sometimes I'll just get one thing and see how it looks, even though it always
right
costs
on,
more if
man.
you just get one.
So are you do you will you have your own booth? Will you be sharing a booth? Will it be
Yeah,
the
yeah.
strangely
So
rooted?
I'll have
So
it'll
how
be
are
the
they gonna
strangely
find
rooted booth. I got a canopy. Says strangely rooted on the canopy. And I'll have a table with like I got a runner thing that goes on the table, so it'll have the other logo, like a black tent. Probably
and
be clouds
again,
coming out of
because
it.
they're asking in chat, I don't know what it is about this event, but I've had it's what gems. What is the event again?
Gems and genetics.
Gems and genetics. It sounds so fucking easy to remember, but every time I've been asked, I'm like, gems and fuck shit. I'll get back with you on that because they're asking in chat. They want to know
Yeah,
when how
that
they can find
that
it.
Sarnes Resort. I don't know. It's on the west side.
We have a lot of Michigan viewers, so hopefully that you'll run into a few. If you're looking, tell them you seen him on the show for one. Say, hey, what's up, man? I seen you on the fucking show, man. I seen
For
you on
sure.
fucking talking shit.
Yeah, and I'll have some of these holographic stickers. So if you want one of those, come see me.
So
Hopefully,
Smiley's asking, where is it though? I know it's just north of Grand Rapids, right?
um, Yeah, like just northwest. Like Sarns Resort is the like camp resort thing that it's at. That's what it's called. SARNS Resort. So you could probably just type that in. Um, yeah. I don't know. It's like 3 hours for me. So
Oh, you must be way down there.
no, I'm just north of Flint, like
Oh,
Mount
really?
Morris. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. What
Nice.
about you?
I am just south of Grayling, kind of
Oh,
north
okay.
between Grayling and Holt Lake, I guess, in that
Yeah,
area.
not too
I'm
bad. But
from I'm from Genesee County though.
okay.
It's my stomping grounds. I might be drawn back that way as I was just down there yesterday for because I'm up from again Genesee, all over Genesee County. No people in Flint, Clio, Mount Morris, Flushing.
Mhm.
I know all the back roads. It's you know what I mean.
Like
I'm
all back
frequent in
roads.
that area. Uh, I know the area very well. So my daughter is actually I'll be a grandfather this year, and I was down
Congratulations.
there for her diaper party yesterday, and she's trying to draw me back downstate.
Mhm.
Love my daughter, man. They can be so selfish sometimes, man. I'm like, get the fuck out of the city. She's like, no, come back down here. I'm
I don't like going south at all. Like I like going north. It's better.
yeah. Unfortunately, I'm a sucker for my children, and at this point, she's kind of winning the war. So I may
Well,
be back
that's a
down
different
there this
reason.
year.
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go.
More central though. I've missed a lot of events because for me, man, most of that shit, man, to go down towards like the Hash Bash and Paw Paw's got a lot of great events down there, Rainbow Farms and shit that
Mhm.
sound good, but man, we talked about the garden there and the indoor versus outdoor. You know what I mean? Plant always on your mind. What's the plant doing when you're in fucking indoors, man? That's all the time. Security, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You don't go from home, man. I go to events most time, a lot of even if they're camping. There's a fucking camping event, Bigfoot. Wasn't far from here. And then rather than stay, I'm like, nah, I gotta go check the garden and shit. You know what I mean? It's fucking 20 minutes away and shit. Still fucking I can't do it. I gotta go check the garden.
Dude,
So
that's the thing about outdoor. Once you get that shit going out there, it's like in the peak of just growing, they're just doing their thing, and pretty much nothing's gonna fuck them up unless something real bad happens. You don't
that's
have to
why
you
I
don't
was
have to worry
saying
about
that.
shit overflowing and stuff out there. It's just like it just kind of happens.
There's where I was saying I'm envious of the outdoor grower, the freedom of the outdoor grower,
Yeah, I mean,
right
I still
there,
don't like to
man.
leave for more than like a day or a night or two, but I will. I'll have somebody check on stuff, but yeah, I can water
Again, you
them.
guys kind of got that crunching time, though. I mean, if they're in the ground, they're pretty well all right until they start flowering.
Yeah, I
Only an
mean, you got
asshole would fuck with your plants at that point, I think.
yeah, Mother Nature. She could
Yeah,
be
true,
cruel.
true.
Just get fucking like hail and mold and you know bugs. But I feel like if the plants are healthy, most of that's not a huge issue. Yeah.
And again, as far as like the bugs and stuff go, I'm just like again dipping my feet into like the regenerative mindset and shit like that. But in that again, from what I understand, the regenerative part of it all is kind of putting things in place and letting it all kind of like equal out. You know what I mean? And so a couple years into it, your cannabis journey there, do you find like the bugs have kind of lifted nature's, evened its way out? This eats that, you know what I mean? Somewhat.
Um, I mean, I think like it's just like each year can be different, especially for like different bug pressure. But because like it could just be like a crazy year for aphids or whatever, and they could come in, fuck shit up. But I think it's mostly just like being better at paying attention to it and like not trying to react right away. Like if I see some aphids, say I'm like trimming up the lowers and stuff, and I'm on the ground kind of, and I see like aphids on the cover crop or like maybe on the lower branches. If it's just a few, I'm like, okay, just keep going, whatever, no big deal. If I see a few more, okay. If I see a ton, then I'm like, well, that's not good. But like if I see a few and then I see like there's a ladybug, because there's always ladybugs out there and they eat the aphids, So I'm like, okay, I got some aphids, I got some ladybugs. That's good. That seems right. That's like, and there's a bunch of other stuff that I don't really know a whole lot about, but that's just like it doing its thing, right? Like there should be some. It shouldn't be like if there's no aphids, that's great, but if there's some aphids, that's like I feel like that's just how it's gonna be. That's just nature being nature. It's fine. As long as nothing gets like out of balance, like out of control, that's when you start to have problems. Like all of a sudden you see fucking tons of aphids in one spot in the corner of the greenhouse and like two plants. It's like, oh fuck, okay, this is not good. But if they're just here and there, like I don't worry about it at all. Like whatever, no problem. But it's just like paying
Did you
attention.
did you tell me? I know you told me what you harvested last year. That's kind of where we started the conversation. But what's on? Did you tell me what's on deck for this year?
No, I don't know what all I got through last year, what we did harvest, but yeah, this year there's. So I'll start with the seeds. I got. Have you heard of Rising Moon Medicinal? He's in Michigan. He's a Pure. You know that dragonflyers medicine people? Pure certified. He's one of the Michigan Pure guys. Him and the Swampy Acres, and then like Michigan Regenerative Farmer. They're all cool dudes. But
He's been on Michigan Regenerative Farmer. So as
oh nice.
Dragonfly Earth Medicine's been on as well.
Oh hell yeah. Yeah, they're great. What was it? What were we talking about?
I sidelined you, I guess there. What you were going to drop this year? You were talking about
Oh,
seeds. What?
yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Rising Moon Medicinal. I got some of his stuff. So I got the Gray Patch plant, and then I got Pine Hem Sap. Which is like I'm probably botching all of these. I can't remember all the names of it, but I got like three different ones from him. One's like MD by Sour Best Shit Ever 78 or something. I don't know. I'm like pretty bad with strains, honestly. So that's his stuff, what I can remember. And then I got some seeds from Ross of Fresh Coast Seed Co. I got some shit from him at the regenerative conference. He just like gave me some seeds. The Gorilla Butter F1, I think. F1 V2 or something. He gave me 2 packs of that. So I popped 12 of those. And then Miracle Icing or Marathon Icing, which is like Marathon OG by like Garlic Icing or something. I'm not actually positive what those are, but I tried to ask him, but I couldn't remember. Like I said, I'm pretty bad with streets. So I think that's all the seeds I popped. So then clones. Let's see. I have Blow Drops, which is a new one. I haven't run that yet, but one of my buddies hooked me up with it. And he said that's like a 6% washer. And it's like, the Tropicana and whatever, Blow Pop. So it's got the orange fruity. I like that. And I like having those to dab on. It's nice to break it up from like the gas. Um, so the blow drops. I got melted strawberry from him too. I haven't grown that yet either. I'm excited about that one. I got the ice cream cake I told you about. I got the grease monkey, and those are clones that I've kept going. And then the cherry, yeah, first class funk, wedding mint. There's more. I can't remember. I don't know. I got way too
Oh
many.
man, I find it refreshing. To be honest with you, be honest, seriously, because I'm that way myself, man. I have nothing but respect for all those cats that can fucking just off right off the cuff be like, "Oh, that, yeah, that's blah 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 blah." I
Fucking
ain't that
clone.
dude.
And then he
I'm
gave
not
him
that
this
dude.
nut, and that's this one from over here. I'm like, what? Like, how do you fucking know all that? Yeah, that blows my mind. I'm the
Even the
worst
shit
at
in
it.
my garden, like, what's the
I barely
cross
know what
on
I'm
that? I'm like,
growing.
hold on, let me get my book. I wrote it down.
That's how I am. I'm like, I write everything down like 5 times, in like different spots. Like, okay, especially with the outdoor stuff. Like, I'll put a tag in the ground on the plant. I'll have a tag around the thing. I'll have it written down. I'll have it like written down in each aisle. And like by the time it comes time to harvest, I got like maybe one of each, like everything either gets like broken, the sun fades it, it blows away, It's like by the time it's over, I'm like, okay, I got a map where I write everything down. So it's like this plant is this in case all the tags blow away or whatever. Like, triple mark everything, especially outside. I don't know how I got on
Yes.
this.
I don't know about the triple mark, but it sounds very wise. I don't know how many times I've either put my labeling stick in a pot and it's either sank down in between, next to the pot in the fucking whatever, sank down and I'm just kind of lost it, or forgot to put the tag in there, or just whatever. I've sprayed off the fucking name or the writing on the tag on the marker itself, and I
But
just no longer can read it. That's where clones from them plants now are labeled fuck fuck one and fuck
yeah, right.
two
Oh fuck.
until until harvest, and then I can go, oh fuck one with chili bean. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've definitely done that.
Go back through the book and clarify some shit up real quick. All right, I know where I'm at again. Shit happens. I can respect the triple marking though.
Well, like outside, it's just like shit gets crazy, and the sun just fucking destroys everything. It's hard to mark stuff out there. But like I've had the on those huge plants last year, I had those like tags you like loop around, around the stalk or whatever on a branch, and it just kind of like the plastic kind of goes through a hole and holds itself. So I have it on like the biggest setting. I had them all marked, and on the big plants, those things snapped, and they were just because the plant just outgrew it, and then they just broke, and they were like, they were big. I was like, oh shit, the tags broke off. Never had that happen before. That was cool. Fucking monsters.
Nice problem to have right there. Did you try to save or do something with them with that in particular carcass or those carcasses, man? That's like
I
that's
actually
a
just,
trophy carcass right there, man.
dude, yeah, I just posted a thing on my story the other day. I was just clearing out the beds, and I was getting the carcasses out of there basically. And yeah, I thought about like one of those. I thought about like drilling it out and making like a bong out of it or something. Because it was like some solid wood, like you could make some shit with it. I might try and do that this year. They're pretty much
Oh
rotted
shit.
out now.
I think it'd be funny. We need to start it strangely rooted. Well, fucking the like mounts, just like fucking deer racks and shit, trophy mounts of your fucking yeah. Have a
Yes.
bunch of fucking on their wall and shit, just like a hunter would do and shit. Yeah, that was 2022 right there, man. Fall harvest.
Dude, so one cool thing I did, I've done it 2 years now. My brother brought me a deer head, and like one way to clean a deer head is you can like bury it. And he's like, well, yeah, you just like bury it in the ground. And I'm like, well, how about we bury it in one of my beds? And he's like, okay. And so I buried a deer head in my bed, and you like leave it buried for a year, and then you pull it out, and it's like clean, like all the microbes and the worms. And so I did that, and had a plant growing on top of it. I didn't know what that plant was. It was like a random seed that I grew, and that was that year where I grew a bunch of random seeds. So I just called it Buck Hunter. It grew on top of a deer head, and that plant was fucking huge, dude. And then we pulled the deer head out, a year later, and it was like when I harvested, there was just worms everywhere, like all over, like fistful of worms. I was like, oh, okay. They fucking like that. And the root ball was right next to that. I'm like, that's fucking gnarly. But it definitely worked. Did not work, I'll say that.
You think that's the grandma's boy? Do the deer live on through the cannabis and shit? That's an antler weed right there and shit.
Oh fuck. That's great. This weed is gonna turn you into a baboon. What did they say? Yeah, that's a great movie.
You never know,
No,
man. They
no,
say
but
they can pull terps and all this shit from the soil. Never know.
that I gave some of that to one of my other buddies that hunts, and he's like, he shot 2 deer, and he was like, I smoked buck hunter before I went out hunting both times. Like, no shit. Like, that's pretty cool.
Fred
Yeah.
Bear smoking shit. I don't like the buck hunter though. That's just good.
Yeah.
Okay. Put me in the zone, man. I was in their head, man. I was in their head.
Literally. Yeah, the roots were like almost like growing into the skull. It was pretty gnarly. I was kind of hoping I could like pull it up and like, you know, and be like, I feel like you could plant it right above and have it, and it would just be like the roots would go right through, and you could pull it up, and the root ball would have like a skull in it. Pretty metal.
That'd be awesome to fucking dry and lacquer them all together. Just have them set on a fucking
Yeah,
rail. That would be
that's what I'm saying. It'd be like they'd have antlers, and then like the whole like weed plant would be more antlers.
that'd be pretty badass. That's kind of artsy, man. People buy that shit, man. People buy some shit like that for
I
sure,
think
man.
so. It's like, what the
Oh
fuck
yeah.
is going on here? Like you
Especially if
look
you
at it and
could
then be
take
like,
it to
wait,
where
what?
you were
How would you do
you were
that?
talking to, like, you could drill it out, make it a bong, and then on rooted right into that skull.
The skull.
Oh man.
Oh, you
Yeah, you
fucking
could
light it right
practically
at the
name your
nose.
price at that point on that bad boy. They'd be a taker. They would be a taker.
Oh, for sure. It definitely wouldn't be for everyone, but yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool.
I'm a skull guy. I am most definitely, and at my age, I'm still a skull collector. I have skulls. I have skull tattoos. I'm tatted probably from the tip of my toes to my hips and my elbow. I'm well tatted, but my legs, I bet you there's got to be, oh, man, more than we can count skulls on my legs. Seriously, buried in there. Yeah, there's quite a few. So yeah, I'm definitely a skull. I might be that guy that snatches up that fucking pipe. Holy shit, man.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try and do it. I think I got one out there right now. I'll put a plant right over top of it and try and fucking aim it into the
That'd be
middle of
cool
the
as shit.
skull. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I think yeah, that you could wash it out at the end. I think after they like pierced into it, I don't know. There'd be a way you'd be able to
Dude,
maybe.
the worms and the bugs, like it comes out clean.
No, I mean, well, there would be still soil in there. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
at
yeah,
one point you'd want to wash that out. I think you
for
could.
sure.
I think you could like dig it up, let it dry so the roots hardened and shit, and then kind of maybe rinse that
Oh,
out
dude,
to where
those
it
roots
would
are
just be
those the
roots
roots
and skull.
in the outdoor plants are plenty hard. It's like the initial roots coming out of those things are basically like fucking branches. That shit's crazy. They're not like
I
little.
actually, just speaking of like really tough roots like that, at one point, Mr. Spliff was the gentleman that I actually started taking note of his technique for. And that was kind of like an up potting method. So basically, every time I transplanted to get more fuel out of the pot that I was using, the soil I was using, I would up pot, basically leaving at least a third sticking up.
Sure.
Okay. And then what happens in that process is through the up potting process as you water over time, those what's above kind of gets exposed. You know what I mean? And each one of those roots kind of become their own little like plant. They harden off and just like
Yeah.
branch out thicker and thicker as they deep drive down like that. But I've had a lot of cool carcasses just from that, you know what I mean? Tearing
Oh
out.
yeah.
But I
Yeah, and I've seen them like go
never.
around too, like underneath where it's just like crazy shit.
Yeah, yeah. You get so those hard roots like you're talking about wrapping around that skull like that. Yeah, somebody would take that fucker in a second.
Yeah, I've seen people like plant stuff and like do like little bonsai weed stuff where there's like a sculpture and there's like a little statue thing or something in the plant and they like grow it around it and then like a guy in there or something, like part of the stock now.
Cool shit, man. Again, man, that plant's so damn hardy, man. You can do some cool shit with it.
Yeah, yeah, and those big ass plants like that shit, those roots are crazy, dude. Yeah, like literally use like a sawzall to cut them. Probably a chainsaw would have been better. Like you ain't snipping those things with some loppers. I was just like, oh shit, I legit need something like different. This isn't gonna work. Yeah,
Oh man, no. I ain't
it's
never
pretty
seen
cool.
no pop can loppers. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah, I was very happy. I was thrilled, thrilled it all worked out. It was really hard to deal with, and there was definitely some rot with those huge plants, but I was just getting to everything as fast as I could. Like I can only do so much. If I could have gotten to them sooner, I could have got more, but that's like, what would I have done with more? I could barely, deal with what I had as it was. Is kind of crazy. Like just totally different problems that I've never had. Like, never thought I would ever have. I'm like, okay.
Dream problems, I think. I think at any point, if you look back at like smoking cannabis and what you thought you could do, like as far as growing and shit, I don't think that would ever been on the scale of
No.
problems.
Well, I think back to like high school all the time when I'm smoking, and I'm like, if I could have like seen then when I'm like, scrounging around to try and pull up a joint paper or something, like where it is now, I'm just like, this is like crazy. Yeah, whole different world.
as it goes, man, the quality of just what we smoke from then to now. I mean, how many times as a grower have you dropped a nug on the floor and thought, yeah, I got no water here. Fuck that.
Yeah, I
You
usually get them
know,
on the
whatever.
floor. It's just because it's
Well,
like I'm like passing out. Like I don't even give a fuck. It's just as good. Depends on the floor, I
I'm
guess.
I'm just saying we're a lot less picky.
Oh
You
yeah.
know what I mean? To where back in the day, seeds, you would be scraping seeds and whatever we could find for that last joint, to where
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure you may not agree with the nug thing, but
I
I
see.
bet
I see
you'll
what you're
agree
saying
on
now.
the
No, I'm
point.
with you.
We throw away a lot more usable cannabis that the old us would be like, hey man, empty that tray right out. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, let's just
I
brush
want a
that off the
fresh,
floor. Yeah,
clean
not
that
good.
up. I want a fresh tray. I don't want to even smoke that shit. Yeah, I've done it many a time.
Yeah, like when I'm harvesting, I'll do this thing. Like I have a jar that's just like when I'm harvesting and trying all the new weeds and like seeing if it's ready yet. So I'll like roll a joint, right? But then like I have the weed from the different strain before in the grinder, so like I'll put that all in one jar and just keep adding, emptying the grinder so I can like because I want to taste just the new strains. I've never tasted it before, so it's like, oh, you just dump all the weed into the grinder, and then after harvest, it's like this jar is full, and I'll just like roll joints, or my brother comes over, like I'll just have him roll joints out of that. I'm like, yeah, it's still good weed, but I've never been to where I'm like, well, I'm gonna empty this grinder out so I can get this fresh weed. It's like, what the fuck? It's never been like something I even thought would be a thing. Like, what are we doing here?
It happens. It happens. I call that there the Turkish blend. Basically, what you got going there. A
Oh
little
yeah,
bit of
that's
everything. House blend, possibly. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Usually it's like whoever comes over and is looking for something to smoke. Like, here you go, roll up out of that. But sometimes it's like they'll roll one out of there and I'll be smoking. I'm like, ooh, this one's good as fuck. It'll be like some layer in there, that had some really crazy shit mixed with something else.
oh, what you drinking there, my friend?
Drinking water now.
Right on.
I was
Coffee
drinking coffee earlier,
myself.
and then I was drinking a beer. Now I'm drinking water.
What kind of beer do you drink?
Bush lattes. Yeah. I mean, I like all the beers, but that's what I drink normally. I'm unashamed Bush Light drinker. If you want one this weekend, come find me. I'll give you one.
I definitely have drinking a many of Bush myself back in the day. Haven't drank in a while, but back in the day, I most definitely am drinking quite a few Bush.
Yep.
Not
I like
bad.
I like everything. I
What
just
I
that's
remember.
I just like nice cold beer, easy to drink, and they're cheap. And I'll give anybody one. I don't give a fuck. I'll give them out. I'll go get them more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a cool guy right there. Appreciate that shit, man. Seemed like a fun gentleman to hang out with. I don't know why they wouldn't come look you up this here weekend.
Hell yeah. It's gonna be a party for sure. Forward to it.
I hope I hope for cannabis purposes they asked you what you got cannabis before they ask you for the beer though.
Oh yeah. They always do.
I'm rooting for the cannabis cooler. I'm rooting for the cannabis cooler myself.
For sure. Yeah, the beer's just a side incidental kind of thing, just something to wet your whistle. That's all.
Right.
The weed's what we're here for. Me, anyway.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun event. I'm so glad that a lot of these folks are, willing to put themselves out there to start some of these events because, man, there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get this shit to pop off. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I'm just happy to be going to them and doing it. I don't know what's gonna happen with all of that in the future. We'll see. Hopefully it just is cool. Somebody was just telling me somewhere in California they're talking about having it so that you could like sell weed at a farmer's market, just like same way you sell your produce, like with the at the same market though. So you go to like the real farmer's market and sell weed there, which would be great. That would just be making it like how it should be. You know what I mean? Because the farmer's market model is pretty solid for farmer to customer. There's not a ton of hoops you have to jump through. I mean, who knows how they're going to do it, but I feel like that's like what these events should be going towards, right? Just like anybody can come and bend and pay a little fee or whatever, and not get charged an arm and a leg to try and sell someone some weed.
Right now. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the market style, the farmers market style, the caregiver market. Thank goodness that there is still a few places there in, central Michigan, Flint, Genesee area where you can still caregivers are allowed to, have the club or, almost the farmers market type
Yeah, like the
atmosphere.
vehicle city and stuff like that. G3.
Uh-huh. So
Yeah.
take just on a funny side note, and to kind of put myself right in some crosshairs here, but I actually was one of the first people in Michigan to help start the first farmers market here in Michigan, right in Clio, right
Like
there at 57 and 75, right there, where the Taco Bell and the Walmart and all that is, right there. There, if you probably know the location that I'm talking about.
yeah,
There's the Taco Bell, the KFC, and all that, and now
yeah.
there is again an RV place right back there. Well, at one point at 2007, there was a RV place that went under right there, and myself and a bunch of friends uh, took over that building and started what we called at the time the CRI, or the Cancer Research Institute, and we tried to do a whole in-house type setup to where we actually had a doctor there once a week trying to get people licensed, get their medical license. We had a big screen TV set up to where you could come and hang out if you were a member and fucking watch TV. And we had like a little gym set up to where you could work out. We tried to like have a one and all setup, but we started a farmers market there in 2007, right when this thing was first kicking off uh, at that location, until it got scary. Clio really clamped down on us and scared us off, man. Town meetings every week, and they definitely run us right out. But it was a fun time, man. I love them cowboy days. Definitely the backpack. I miss the backpack days.
I fucking missed
I
it, dude.
so miss it.
Yeah. I definitely missed that. I feel like
it
once I got
was
up here and
always
started
fun to see.
throwing
You can
legal, I
identify
just
with each other when you pass by with the backpack. You kind of knew, oh, there's another caregiver, especially if you could hear the clink of a jar. You knew. Kind of gave
I
that
love
now.
that. You go to any of the weed shows, everyone's got backpacks and clinking around. Yeah.
The funniest moment I had during that era is I had a transmission go down in my truck, my Dodge, and I'd taken it in and dropped it off in Flint there, actually. And I'm sitting there and I had once over my, truck to make sure I didn't have any cannabis stuff in the truck, you know what I mean? Because I was handing it off. And as I'm sitting there in the lobby, this cat comes in with the backpack, sets it between his legs, clank, clank, clank. And I was like, how you doing? I knew exactly and shit. Fucking, it was, yeah. It was a good conversation though. It was one of funner weights I've had in like a
Yeah.
lobby in a while. What you
Right.
growing? You can't hide it at that point. What you got in the bag, man? I know.
Oh yeah.
I'm hoping that that comes around. You know what I mean? At some point that we can legally open up. I think that the legal market will get so bland or blah that they'll have no choice but to resurrect some type of craft market, or the ones that have sustained will boom, for
Yeah.
that reason right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see how everything plays out, like in the long run, you know, because it really should just end up like how farmer market, how you can just go sell vegetables if people want to do it at that scale. But yeah, I guess I don't know what you do. It's gonna obviously there will be the rack market. There will be everything. You'll have fucking Walmart of weed everywhere, but then there will still be like people growing good weed, and people still got to be
Well,
able to get
that
that.
there's just something to be said about like that point that we've talked about again early in this episode, how we like our cannabis. I kind of like it on that fresher side, and you kind of admitted too there's that sweet spot between freshness and long-term cure where it's still sticky. You know what I mean? That if it's got to stick to the scissors. Your scissors got to. I barely pull apart. Your scissors should look like this. You know what I mean? There should be cannabis stuck on there. You shouldn't poof.
Oh
It
yeah,
shouldn't be a magic trick when you scissors hit it that it breaks itself all out.
yeah, and that's pretty much all like post harvest, maintenance or whatever you want to call it. Paying attention to everything. I mean, the bud's got to be good to start with. But I've had some strains where it's like I don't see how this bud could ever dry out. It's just like so sticky, and it's like there's like even if all the water was out of it, there's so much trichome, and it's just like gunky. I don't know. I wanted to see if that would ever dry out, but it didn't last long enough. You know.
That's my favorite cannabis right there.
Yeah.
The grease. You know what I
It's
mean? I
fucking
think
sticky. Yeah.
and there's, in my opinion, there's more fats and lipids and shit. I think that's what the grease is, in those buds. A
I
little
can
less trichomes, but a little bit more fats and lipids and shit that are holding in the terpenes. Got that grease, you know.
Yeah, and it's like you can tell in it burns, it's a thick smoke. Like some shit's light if it's not light. But that's how I like it.
That's the full melt hash right there, man. That bud right there.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah,
got cold if you can only pull that bag once without having to clean it or something. You don't even have to let it dry at anything. If you have to wash that bag after one pull, it's all sticky as you pull it out. You got some gold in that bag.
Yeah. Yeah, fucking washing hash is crazy, dude.
So how do you are you how well, never asked you that. I mean, you said you kind of invested a little bit there, but what's your method? Did you buy a machine? Are you hand washing
So
what's your method?
I did like I started off just hand washing. Like I did a couple runs hand wash, just like a couple washes just to see. And then I was like, you know, this is kind of a pain in the ass. And then I got the machine, and then I like fucking rigged that thing all up. Got rid of the pump and all that shit. So it's just like straight tube out of the bottom with that valve. And so I have the whole thing like inside of a 4x8 tent out there in the garage. And I have the tent surrounded by like inch and a half pink insulation, like foam board. And then I have a space heater on a temp controller inside of the tent because it was getting down to like, below zero. And I got like water lines and shit in there, and my tall boy filters in there, so I don't want it to freeze. And then the bags don't work if they're fucking frozen. I found out they don't work good at all. So I just keep it at like 32 basically. And so I have like what do you call it, like a stock tank, like 100-gallon stock tank, just like a little one though. That's inside of the 4x8 tent, and then I have like a piece of wood on top of that with like foam in between. And then the washing machine sits on top of that, and there's a sump pump inside of the tank underneath on a key fob, like a pump sump I can turn on and off. And it's hooked to the washing machine, and then there's a Y, and the other one's hooked to just a sprayer. So I can hit the sump pump and spray the bags, and then so the washing machine's on top. It washes, and then it comes out, and it goes across the other side of the tent where there's another tote with the trash can. So it just drains straight into the trash can with the bags, and that drains out into I have a little drain that goes outside. And then yeah, I got this thing that shakes the trash can. There's like holes in the bottom of the trash can, and that's in its own little tub thing with the drain. And my buddy has this. He started this company. It's called ShakerBot. You can find them on Instagram or online. And he's like got these little motors that fucking. It's just like the ShakerBot. It's a 5-cord motor. It's dope though. And so you like if your bags are full of water, you just kick this thing on and it fucking. And I got it on like like a router speed controller, like you can use for the fans. You just got it on one of those so you can turn it up or down, and it fucking shakes all the water through. And yeah, so he just like hooked it up with that, and so I've never really had a problem. I've never like pulled the bags out full of water. I don't know. Apparently that's an issue. I haven't done that. Usually I like to do everything the hard way first, but that just seemed like it made a lot of sense. And you can like kick on the spray. You can kick on the shaker after all the water's through and spray while it's shaking. So it's like agitating while you're rinsing. So it's like any heads that aren't that size seems like that would get it through really well, like efficiently.
He's kind of a little bit ahead of the curve there. He's on the right path, that's for sure. I definitely know a lot of hash makers. Uh, some of the ones that have, kind of come up with a lot of today's modern techs, and a lot of them that are coming up with new tech. And you're right. Him, both are right on with that method there of the kind of agitation motor there. But see and again, I greatly appreciate it because I have, and me myself and any hash maker, it most certainly have had it to this day. Unless I know gonna find something in that 25 bag. I don't even fuck with it. And even at that, I have a couple of good methods to, where I've learned to like shake, lift, and kind of on the
Right.
down pull, give a
Yeah.
good quick pull. You know what I'm saying? I can
Yeah.
empty a 25 in pretty
I've
good
seen the
time,
videos. I've never had to
but
do it.
you know what I mean? But with that machine, I can see how that would eliminate a lot of time, a lot of hassle and shit. But this is what the future holds, I think.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Two methods with what you're talking about, the agitation. I think at some point we're gonna fucking see it in the machine. We're no longer gonna necessarily be using ICID or anything else. We're gonna find. In fact, I seen on TikTok yesterday, uh, this little like it looked like a hot plate, but you set water on it and it instantly froze the water. Okay, so I think at some point we'll be using something like that in a vibration method, like you're talking, to fucking just shake that water and just kind of,
Whoa.
vibrate it right off the plant matter. And then we'll be emptying it into the bags. We'll just be skipping the ice.
I feel
I
like
think that's
yeah.
going to be a thing.
I feel
And then
like yeah. Go ahead.
Indra's talked about on some episodes where I've talked about him, and he wouldn't nail down the method because there's patent fights going on right now about this.
Is it
And that's the ultrasonic separation, which is a dry
okay?
method.
Yeah.
And basically, you've seen the videos basically where they dumped sand on a piece of metal and then they played with the frequency to make, of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
the geometric patterns and
Yeah.
shit. They're going to use that technology right there to be able to just dump a bunch of
Dry
cannabis
stick.
on a screen and find that sweet spot for trichome
Float it out.
size. Yep, and just sink and be able to dry sift a whole batch
And
in
everything else will just
seconds.
fall away.
Yep, yeah.
They're like, all right, pinpoint trichome size.
Mm-hmm. By shaking, by vibration size, I think that's
Well,
going to be.
all right,
They'll be
that's
like
probably
turn it up or turn it down. You know what I mean? Dial it in per string. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that seems like that sounds like it's gonna be expensive.
Well, if you're doing large amounts and shit like that, you know what I mean? And then it
Well,
more or
it's just
less
like
as
if it works
manufacturing
way
comes
better,
through.
that's the one thing. Like it might work way better. That's then it's like, well, now you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel
I
like
mean,
the
like we talked about earlier, man, if we can cut corners on these losses that we're taking on all these washes and shit like that, and being able to retain more of the medicine itself, you know what I mean? The better off we're going to be. It might be a little bit more in the initial and the upfront, but I think we'll get there at some point.
yeah, I feel like one of the biggest things with the hash ice process is like the bags. Like initially to me, just looking at like how we're doing it, it's like the bags, like they work, but I feel like it's not a great way to do it. Like if you could just have like a stainless screen and just somehow like have a thing scrape over it without fucking up the trichomes, that I think that's clearing the screen would be the problem. But if you could just have it like, you could have screens and then just have it like flow out into like a chute or something, collect it that way, so you don't have to fucking deal with the bags. Like it, you know what I mean? Seems like there should be a way to do that, like stationary. It's just like, how do you keep it, sticky? Yeah, there's a lot of issues. But I feel like that's gonna
Man,
happen. It's like hard stainless screens.
oh yeah, yeah. I hope so. Well, I had fucking one point they talk about or sub talked about that, and it's even in one of the Mendo Dope songs. I think it's Hash. I want hash. Where the beginning of the song, sub talks about when he initially had a friend that worked in a sugar plant, you know what I mean, and had those metal sifting things, and they were bringing them home one by one until they actually found one that actually worked well for cannabis, and
Yeah,
they
that's
kind
like
of
what
run
I'm
with
thinking.
that. Yeah,
I don't know.
great
I'm
minds,
sure
right?
somebody's tried it. I don't know. Maybe somebody will. We'll see.
Yeah, it's, as far as like a bubble hash is my method. You know what I mean? As far as, but again, as I'm learning more and more about the cannabis plant, I'm starting to second guess. You know what I mean? It's it's one of those things, like as you learn things sometimes and you go back and reread a book, you're like, okay, I didn't understand that point, when I read the book the first time, and now
Yeah, and
it's
then you go do it.
unlocking new things for me in the book. And my cannabis journey has been like that as well. And the differences in dry sips, wet or bubble, is becoming more like that. I think if I'm looking at it more as a medicine, I'm starting to lean more towards the dry sift, flat out, because there's less loss throughout the whole process. Though, even though I do love the bubble hash, I think we're losing too much medicine throughout the process. Right off the bat, putting into the water, we're losing, busting up those heads. We're losing plant matter terpenes to the water and shit that we can't reclaim. And then even more so, as a worse tragic, in my opinion, just my opinion, I get a lot of hate for this, squishing that hash one more time into rosin, all I see is loss, 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 loss. Even though, you're getting a good product in the end, I think it's way far from medicine at that point. You know what I mean? I think at that point, it's recreation. Even though it has some medical value,
No, at that
it's
point, you're
so
trying to
far
get the
away
best of the
from,
best.
yeah, yeah.
It's like, and the
So,
flavor, I mean, is out of control. That's what it's all about for me. To me, everything should be blind taste test. I don't care who you are or what you do. Blind taste test first, and then tell me something. I wish that was how like everything was. Because people just like look at stuff and then they're like, "Oh, that's not good," or "That's good." But it's like you could look at it, you could touch it, you could even smell it, and then smoke it, and like it's a whole different thing. Like I've smelled weed that looks great, smells great, smoke it, and it's like smoke for shit. Or like the opposite. I've like had grown weed where I'm like, well, this isn't gonna be good, rolling up like, ooh, that tastes pretty good. Way better than I would have ever expected. Like wouldn't have even tried to sell it, just put it, make RSO or something or whatever. Then you smoke them and like, yo, fire. But that's like with
Mr.
rosin too.
Smiley,
Uh,
who's in chat there. Mr. Smiley, who's in chat there, was talking about that the other day, how people can scoff a little bit about, what they think is the perfect bud, you know what I mean, as far as density and all that good shit.
yes.
And then there's the times where you got them nugs that just don't look so good, but are fucking
Fucking
killer.
larpy
And
and
he was
floaty and
he
like,
was
yeah.
telling us the story the other night. He was kind of not freaking, I guess that's a terrible word, but he was uh, he went smart basically on a patient. So basically, he had some cannabis that it amazing strain, super potent, you know what I mean, but doesn't have that chunky bud, dense, you know what I mean, bag appeal that a lot of people unfortunately base good cannabis on. He had slid him some pre rolls, and on the return, man, that fucking shit's fucking good. What was that? Uh-huh. Well, it wasn't that stuff that you were looking for. It was this stuff. You know what I mean? I thought that angle was pretty cool. You know what I
That's
mean? To let
that's
them
that's what I'm
actually
saying.
judge
Yeah.
by effect before the eye. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like that's like with the rosin too, you know, people talk about the color and stuff all the time, and it's like you really should just taste it, and even with the effect too. It's like some stuff even doesn't taste good, but then like the high from it is just like, whoa, like there's something special going on here, you know? So that's like a whole nother thing. Yeah, I'm definitely starting to notice that more too.
Man,
All
I'd
right, take a
lost
leak real
that
quick.
fucking. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no problem, man. Cheers, everybody in chat. Mr. Greenfingers, Gus Gross still hanging out, even so though you said goodnight long ago. Decoy Bacon, Miss Mother Nature's hanging out in chat as well. Cheers to you, Stony Creek, Nick D, AJ. Welcome to the show. Your new name there. Donkey Kong Kingdom. Sorry for butchering your name last night during the shout outs. Cheers to you, Mr. Tony Rockefeller. How you doing this evening? Hopefully well, my friend. Who else we have here in chat? A bunch of great people. And of course, Dr. Buzz Lightyear Acetone. Hopefully I touched a little bit on that question there, what you were trying to ask earlier. So I think we got a little bit of that out for you, my friend. James D. Weaver, cheers to you. How you doing, my friend? Hawaii Sustainable, Jeff Popalik, CJ Apple, a couple more awesome people right there. CJ, man, I hope to catch you at a couple of these cannabis events here in Michigan this year. Hemp with Gigi, cheers to you as well. Nice to see you. What are you guys smoking on? I seen you disc golfing earlier, Mother Nature. Just shooting some names, saying hello to chat. Believe it or not, even though it's 3:22 here in the Michigan time, it is fucking. There's still 79 people hanging out with us, listening to us shoot the shit.
Isn't that something?
Right on.
Hell yeah.
You went well. We went well over that, maybe an hour that we started with.
I told you if you get me going, it might work out.
Oh man, it goes by a lot faster than people think it does when you get started, man. You know,
For
it can
sure.
fly by.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I would definitely do it again if you want to. Or whatever, however it
Oh,
works. I don't know.
well, this is I would always love to follow up, man. I always enjoy, follow up, seeing how people have done in last year or whatever season,
Right.
how
Yeah,
the
that makes
season had treated them. But on top of that, this is how things do work around here. I'm glad you asked. So basically, this is how the channel runs. There's a few shows on the channel, basically three right now. Open to others, but three. So there's a spotlight with that me and you have done, basically. And then once you've done that, then the Zoom link that I've sent you tonight, it's always good. So anytime that you see like Weed Nerd World in the title of a show, which is there, Monday nights is a Weed Nerd World, which starts, well, it's a late start, 2 a.m. And that's open to all past guests. Anybody that's a past guest can come hang out anytime, no invites. It's ever evolving. You know what I mean? At this point, 634 options can pop in on any one night. So
wild.
trying to keep the earlier night going to where there's one at 11:30, a Weed Nerd World, to where if you can't make it till 2, then you come pop in at 11:30 for a few and say hi and smoke. Other than that, the Weed Nerd Worlds go from short shows. So basically, I told you before we got going, the time slot is open from 11:30 to 4:20 nightly. So I'll run the guests as long as they want to go. And if they don't want, like I told you, 10 minutes, hour, whatever, I'm grateful. If we go short, then I turn around and finish the night off with a Weed Nerd World. I'll say my goodbyes to my guests, and then I'll, go to the bathroom, fill my tray, and then I'll empty up, start up the Weed Nerd World.
You're a
So
madman.
anytime that say you can't sleep or whatever, man, you wake up, you turn the channel on, and it says Weed Nerd World, man, come meet the community, man. It's the people that you'll see at these events. It's growers from around the world. There's people that check in from the UK, fucking Germany, Australia, South Africa, Canada. They're all over, people that check into the Weed Nerd World. So that link that I sent you is always good. Anytime you see one, you can't sleep, whatever, man, come hang out, man. Come smoke a bowl. We might. That's the fun thing too, is you never know what you're going to walk into in the Weed Nerd World. We do this every night, so cannabis is a great topic, but at some points, how many nights for 3 years can you fucking talk about cannabis? So it goes from what you got going in your garden to mushrooms. Sometimes it's mushrooms, talking shit on mushrooms in the Weed Nerd World, conspiracy theories. Man, we might be talking about anything in the Weed Nerd World. Anything goes in the Weed Nerd World.
Typical starter stuff.
Yeah. So you're more than welcome to come hang out in any of that. And then at some point, I would love to come back and do a one-on-one follow-up with, just me and you, and see what you've done in the last little bit. That'd be cool as well. But from here on out, man, it's a free-for-all on your part, cool, man. You come go as you please.
Right on. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I'm about ready here.
So I guess one other show I left out, and of course that is the Organic Takeover with Smiley's Gardens, where he talks strictly organics once a month with somebody on a seriously technical level. So lots here, man. And if you get bored, you're working in your garden, blasting it out on a nice sunny day while you're de-leafing, come check us out, man. There's people that you respect, and hopefully people that you'll come to know on the show. You know what I mean? So hopefully we'd like to see more of you, man. It was a great meet on my part. One last thing I'd like to get from you before you go, I know you're tired, my friend, is this silly little thing I call a soundbite, which is basically like the old school radio identification. At some point, I'll run on Instagram and all that for a reminder of this episode. So it will be a commercial for your episode at some point. Basically, what I'm looking for, my version would be, hey, this is Eagle, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 634. You can say whatever the fuck you want before or after that, as long as it's got that in the body of it. I'm totally grateful. I'm ready anytime you are, my friend.
What do I gotta say?
I love it. Basically, my version of it would be, hey, this is Eagle, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 634.
Okay. Hey, this is Strangely Rooted on Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 634.
Yeah, perfect.
That's what you
perfect, my friend.
All right.
Once again, man, thank you for your time, man. It's the most valuable thing we have, and I have gotten a nice chunk of yours, and I can't repay you for it, but I can tell you I have valued it, and so has everybody else. With that being said, man, don't be a stranger. I hope to catch you this weekend. If I make it over there, I will most certainly look you up and shake your hand. First and foremost, that'd be awesome. Yeah. With that being said, for the rest of you guys, thank you for tuning in. The Weed Nerd World, we're so close to the mark tonight. Maybe not. It depends on that break time. With that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do save lives. With that being said, thank you one last time, Strangely Rooted, for hanging out with me tonight. We are out of here, my